Welcome into the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. I'm excited about today's program, and here's why, folks. Rarely on the program, we talk a lot about the darker side of crime on this program. We talk a lot about the criminal element in this program. Today, I'm excited because we're going to get to talk to the lighter side. And I know that you may say the lighter side of crime, but we get to talk today about someone who gets to go out and enforce the law. Someone who gets to go out there and be one of the good guys. Someone who gets to go out there and actually represent us. Someone who gets to go out there and actually do the good in society and get to represent us and get out there. And although I'm putting a little bit of sugar on top of our toast, so to speak, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. John Ferriso is with us today. He's got a wonderful new book that I had the privilege of being able to read this weekend. John's book is called All in a Day's Work, An Officer's Accounts, 20 Years of the NYPD. And I'll tell you, when you get down to it, 20 years in New York is, boy, let me tell you, 20 years in New York is, I think, like 60 years in any other police department. It really is. He's got a lot of stories to share, including, although he just does a blush because there's a whole nother story about 9/11 that he writes. And we'll talk about why he separated that here in this program. But John Ferriso is a retired sergeant, NYPD. After retirement, he went on to supervise the security and overall operations of the Empire State Building and other buildings within Manhattan. John is the owner of a private investigation company, Ferriso Investigation, an agency that specializes in missing person cases. John donates his time with his experience in missing person cases, which, by the way, John has worked some of the hardest divisions in New York. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to him today. He donates his time and his experience in missing person cases to help nonprofit organizations that investigate cold cases throughout the nation. John currently works doing corporate security and intel work for an options trading company in Lower Manhattan. Now, I had mentioned before that short story about 9/11. He's taken that short story and written it separately from this book. That short story is called In a New York Minute, an officer's eyewitness account of the events of September 11th, 2001. It was written about his experiences on that day. Now, there are some accounts in this book that we'll talk about. He does give some very poignant accounts of that day and some flashbacks about that day. But the whole entire story is in that short story. He acquired a master's degree in ancient history. He's a married father currently working on screenplays involving the Roman Empire and its paradox of keeping the peace in ancient times. We have a link in the description of this program so you can find out more about this wonderful man. Let's bring him in now to True Crime Tuesday. Ladies and gentlemen, here's John Ferriso. John, welcome into the program.
Great, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for your service, sir. It's greatly appreciated. And thank you for keeping the people of New York safe and the people of the world safe. I want to start out a little bit slow, and then we'll get into it here. You mentioned it in the book, but I'd like you to mention it to the people of my program as to what interested you in becoming a police officer. First of all, because it's a line of work that I think when we're kids, it's romanticized, but it's not necessarily a romantic venture. What got you interested in it in the first place?
Well, you just said it. It was as a kid, and it was I definitely fantasized about it. I was very in tune to police shows as a young age, and I watched them with my dad. And my dad would take me to the movies. I got a little older, take me to the movies. But I remembered watching all the police shows going back to the 70s. Barney Miller, the Mod Squad, all those ones, and I even internalized them a little because I thought, and I says, that's very interesting what they did, and I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I was a little kid, and I would tell people I was going to be a police officer. I grew up in Queens, New York. There are a lot of cops that come out of this neighborhood. It seems like this is where we come out of. So it's not everybody knows a cop here at Queens. So I had family and friends' parents who were cops, so it wasn't totally removed from me. I definitely, when I would see the movies, I would sit after the movie and go, one day I'm going to be a detective, and that's what I'm going to do. I didn't know exactly the route I was going to go, but I knew I was going to join the NYPD, and I knew I wasn't just going to be a patrol officer. I was going to do some interesting stuff because I had that drive to do it at an early age.
What is it about now? Don't get me wrong. I mean, Queens is just kind of up and away from the, I guess what you want to call downtown or the main part of
Sure.
Manhattan. And then as you get further up, upper Manhattan, the Bronx and whatnot. Um, what is it that makes someone from Queens want to come into the city and deal with the grit and the grime and the hardcore crime of New York City? What draws you?
Well, we're already part of New York City in Queens.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're already part of New York City, part of the five boroughs. It's a blue collar neighborhood. It seems like there's a lot of middle class, some upper middle class, definitely. And there's a lot of other city workers. It's not just NYPD. You get sanitation, you get fire department. It's not uncommon. And I hung out with five guys on the block, and we played stickball, and three of us became cops. So that's a pretty big number just with my circle of friends. It draws you. I remember playing stickball and watching the police cars pass. And not only would I watch them, I'd say, what are they doing and where they're going? And I want to go. And they would just drive by. But I looked at that and I said, I want to go where they're going. I want to do what they're doing. When I saw police activity, my neighborhood was safe, but I did see police activity when I got on the subway, when I went into the city. I would watch the guys in plain clothes in the subway, and I would say, I want to do that. I want to catch the bad guys. I want to put them away. And I saw good and evil, and I saw right and wrong at a young age. And I knew I couldn't be Superman, of course, but I wanted to get involved somehow, and I did.
But John, even when you're a kid, you had to have heard on the news about fatalities, especially the good guys. And didn't that set you back a little bit?
It was, I remembered even in the movie Fort Apache the Bronx, there was some real violence towards police officers in that movie. And I thought about that when I watched that movie. But, I guess it would be like someone who's going in the military. It's like there are things you can worry about, there are things you aren't. If someone's going to go into law enforcement and worry every morning when they wake up, because you put a bulletproof vest on,
Yeah.
and that any law enforcement will tell you the sound of that Velcro is a sound no one else can explain. When that Velcro goes on you, it's a shield. So if you're going to worry about what can happen to me all the time, you're not going to make it. It's not a job for you. Of course, you get nervous and you get worried when a bad situation happens. But a lot of times a bad situation happens in a snap of the fingers. You don't have time to internalize it till afterwards.
There's a kind of a telling story in the book where in you're young in your career and you happen to be, and I'm wondering if you can kind of tell the story. It happens when you're in a car and you're with your partner, you're kind of young on the job, and a robbery is taking place and you're in your car and you just happen to be opening up the paper and you're not realizing that this robbery is going on. And you realize at this point that you could have been taken out. Do you know the story I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's called At the Window. I know that story directly. Yes, I've been asked about that story a lot.
Yeah. Could you inform my audience just a little bit about what we're talking about and why it's so important? And this moment, I take it, comes upon every police officer. It doesn't matter where they're working, but especially in New York, it has to come up, and you just have to realize that from this moment forward, you've got to be on your guard 24/7, 365. Mm-hmm. And that your life is in danger no matter what, no matter where you are, and that you got to have your head on a swivel. Could you go ahead and tell my audience a little bit about it?
Correct. And the reason I wrote that story mainly was because I was complacent and they put me in a dangerous position. So I'm willing, to write that. So basically, when I was in the police academy, they warned us about that exact scenario that happened to me. In the police academy, the instructors would come out and they would very confrontational. They would say, there are people out there that are dangerous. There are people out there who will try to hurt you and kill you. Do not allow it. Always be prepared. And in the academy, they told a scenario about cops who were shot in their car while reading the newspaper. And I remembered that story in the police academy. And the instructor even said that he was told that when he was in the police academy. So most of the time, police work, you are observant. You're watching everything going on. So I was a rookie at the time, and I was working with someone who really never worked with before. I would have probably forgotten who he was or what he looked like if it wasn't for the story. And they it was a very simple assignment, which was there was central booking is where the prisoners go when they are ready to see the judge. It was a busy day in New York City. There was guys that left over, which means that they was still in the precinct. The judge was way too busy. So I had to pick up his lunch, and they gave me the order. So me and my partner, wow, easy assignment. Let's go pick up the prisoner's lunch. Basically, you have two police officers driving around New York City picking up a bologna sandwich. That's exactly what we do.
Right.
So we drive into the confines of another precinct, which means that I was in the 110 precinct at that time, and we drove into the confines of the 103, which is a separate neighborhood and a separate radio division. I don't know if it's like that anymore, but back then, your radio did not work there. I mean, it worked. You had to change the channel and everything. So it's a whole process. And you wouldn't know exactly who was working there because it's on a different, although the 911 system is the same. So we're driving there, and it is common in police work to have conversations that have absolutely nothing to do about police work. So we were talking, and my partner with that day was just talking about his family, just talking. I was driving. So he's talking about his family. We pull up. He says, "I'll be right back. I'm going to go get the prisoner's meal." So I remembered he got out of the car, across the street, went to the diner across the street. And this is before cell phones even. So I picked up the newspaper, reading the newspaper in the car, reading, head down, reading the newspaper, front seat of the car. And I don't know how quickly it happened. I heard like a bang on the window. It probably was an elbow. It was like a thud. It wasn't like a knocking. It was like a thud. Turned around, and there's a guy standing in front of the window with his arms duct taped, but like this, which I thought was odd. His arms duct taped like this. So I guess he was banging with his shoulder or his elbow. And there was blood coming down his face into his shirt. So immediately, I just draw the paper. Said, somebody just shot this guy in the head. What just happened to you? So I looked out the window. I didn't see nothing. As I opened the police car, he falls down on the floor. So I am thinking again, he got shot in the head. So I saw someone running towards the police car. So I'm like, and the guy was good because he said to me, "It just happened. It just happened. It was right here." So I'm like, "What's right here?" He goes, "The woman, she ran inside. They all left." So this happened very quickly. It was like 30 seconds from when I was reading the newspaper. The guy sits up with the hands taped, and he said that he was in his store, and I was parked in front of the store. And while I pulled up and parked, he was being robbed at the window. And not only was he being robbed, there was a man with a shotgun. He wouldn't give up. I don't remember exactly. I think it was the codes to the safe or something to do with he wouldn't tell them something. They were hitting him in the head with a shotgun. Oh. There was a woman in front of the store. And the woman in front of the store saw me pull up. I didn't even see her. The guy that ran up and told me that they just left told me that when I pulled up, the woman ran in, and the guy and someone else, so there was a third person, ran out with the shotgun in front of my car, which means that they ran out directly to my car and made the turn and ran front. I didn't see any of that. So that was their decision to not shoot it out. And if they wanted to shoot it out with me, they had the upper hand on me. And that is how quick it can happen. So basically, I unknowingly pulled right into that type of a robbery, and I was feet from it, and they ran out with a shotgun right in front of me, and that's how fast it happened. So that was a dangerous situation. My partner came out, like, didn't know anything happened. And he's like, "What just happened?" I explained it to him, and I had to explain it to him because it happened so quickly. And, it's one of those situations when you're glad you didn't get hurt or killed. You hope they catch the bad guys, and the person was not dead. He was not shot. He was hit in the head with the gun and was seriously injured, but not life-threatening. But that's how quickly that the prisoners, the bad guys, had the upper hand on me.
Yeah.
And like I said, they could have shotguns me in the car right there if they had to. They wanted to.
Right. If they wanted to be thorough, they could have just dropped you and ran off, and then definitely could have ensured that they would have had no tail on them whatsoever. And nobody would have been able to, well, it's not like that you did identify them, but they could have made sure. And that would have been the sign that they were very thorough, very experienced, and would have known for sure that you didn't see them or identify them. I'll leave the rest of the story for the book so that so people can find out what happened with the rest of that story. Because it is very intriguing. It's a very intriguing story. And again, that's called At the Window. John, you've had some intriguing experiences with different people, and there's different personalities. And New York is a city full of, millions of people, millions of experiences, millions of people who in that melting pot of a city that you get different psychological profiles, and you get a taste of everything. And it's almost like you get to become an amateur psychologist in your job, because you get to deal with all kinds of people, let alone later in your career, you become part of missing persons. So you do have to delve into the muck and the mire of almost a demented mind, someone who would take a person and abscond with them and of course end a life. You have some mighty colorful stories in here, my friend, of some people that, let's just say, some that you had to walk away from, some that you had to directly help because they had no other place to go. There's a touching story here in this that I found incredibly touching, and I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about this woman. There's times where we don't think about this part of police work, and that is a woman, an elderly woman whose house is burned down, and the extent you have to go to as a police officer in order to protect and serve. Can you tell us a little bit about this elderly woman?
Sure, that was an interesting story because you're correct. We had to go extra beyond police work, and we were social workers that day, and we were, I don't know, we were getting shelter for a woman. Basically, what happened was the woman, her house went on fire, and we the first officers on the scene, they didn't get the full story, and I was driving the supervisor, so when we get there, and they were like, okay, the woman's house burned down. She was elderly. It was not a safe neighborhood. It was not a good situation. It was cold. It was winter. And, in these not the best areas, if they see an abandoned house, they'll think about going in it afterwards. And this woman lived alone, so it was not a good place for her to be. So the original officers got shelter for her. And just so happens, we were done. That was it. Okay, there was a bad fire at a house, nothing suspicious. She's staying with a friend. I was driving the supervisor. We went on and did something else. Ironically, we drive past the house later and we find her crying in front of the house. So, as concerned people and officers, we had to find out why she's back at her house crying, and she had no place to go and no place. That was it. She lived alone. Her house burned down. It was a shell. It was somewhat boarded up. It was cold out. It was winter. And, it's not, you're supposed to enforce the law, but you're supposed to also handle people's issues and complaints. I mean, there's a lot of complaints as an officer you really can't. It's like listen, there's some things that people need to figure out on their own, especially like that's not domestic, but family issues. We're like, okay, we're not that much of a social worker. But this was a situation when we really didn't know what to do. So my sergeant was like, just put her in the car, we'll figure it out. And, I don't come from a background of social work, but you learn it quick in law enforcement. Any law enforcement officer will learn social work very quick. And some are better than others. Some are very good. Some need work on it, but you learn it. It's just what happens. And she wouldn't get in the car. And I was like, man, we're not leaving you here. You have to go. She's like, I'm not going to the shelter. So I get it. I don't, she was elderly. Nobody wants to go in a New York City shelter. They were never good and probably never will be. So the shelter is only an extension sometimes of prison. She didn't want to go to the shelter. So my sergeant, he thought on his feet. He had more time than me. He said, let's take it to the emergency room. We'll figure it out. So I was like, okay, we'll just drive in the emergency room. And someone within that emergency room took the bull by the horns, I guess you'd call it, and made a decision, put her name in the computer, and realized that she was due for it was some type of a second shot for something, like inoculation or something. So he's like, well, she needs the second shot. We're going to have to admit her until then. So, the woman originally did not want to even go to the hospital. And I told her, like I would tell anybody else, and I'm in my 20s and I'm speaking to a 75, 80-year-old woman, like I'm almost a child here. And I'm saying, I don't know what to tell you, man, but if you go to a shelter, you're going to be sleeping with homeless women tonight. It's either that or the emergency room will figure it out. And there was nothing physically wrong with her. So we did bring her into the emergency room, and the hospital administrator really did the right thing. Now, I don't know the ending of that story because I don't know because not like we went to the hospital the next day to see how that woman does it. I mean, we left her in the emergency room for the night, maybe 2 nights, and she had no family. Just one of those sad stories in New York City, but that's the best we could do at that moment was to get her shelter for that short period of time. And hopefully she ended up with a better facility than where she was.
Well, and that's not your job to continue to follow up. At that point, I'm sure the hospital administrator has someone in social services, or they have a social services department where they can try to find a way to get her appropriate housing from there. But at that point, you're right. Your supervisor is thinking quick on his feet and thinking, you know what, there is an appropriate solution to this, and we can continue, to try to help her rather than dropping her in an inappropriate place when she's going through trauma. I mean, this woman had been in the house all her life, and now she's going to get just thrown to the wolves, so to speak. And you guys weren't willing to do that. And it's applaudable to do what you guys did. So that was a heartwarming and touching story in the book, which again, my hat's off to you for that. That was a wonderful solution. One of the stories in the book is a little bit creepy, and I don't blame you guys for the solution you took, because at this point, what do you do? And talking about the Rocky Horrors chapter in the book, wondering if you can explain this story, because I don't know what you do in this area either. And you have a compatriot, a partner who stands about 6'5", and he didn't know what to do.
Didn't know what to do.
And this again is another elderly lady who's dressed in a nightgown who comes to the door, and you're called out on what kind of call on this one?
That story is funny because I almost didn't put that in the book because it's so short that I had to really recall, because what I used to do is when I was in the NYPD, I knew I was going to write very early on. So I would take little notes on the side. I didn't tell my coworkers what I was doing. So I remember I just jotted it down. And then after I retired, it was such a little paragraph of this case. And it was funny because me and my partner used to talk about it. And we got a call. It was it was called See Complainant, which basically means someone called the radio dispatcher. They can't figure it out, but somebody needs to go. I don't know exactly what she told the radio dispatcher, but they didn't tell us. It's one of those things when it's late at night, we get to her apartment, and the door was already open. Mm-hmm. So, any police officer will tell you, you call 911 and they're not at the doorway, but the door's already opened. You think it's something bad just happened in there. So it was a very dark apartment, and you couldn't see inside. And all we hear is this low muffled voice. And I'm like, okay. So we had our flashlights, and my partner was a lot taller than that. The reason I say how big he is, because you'll see read the book, it was pretty funny with him. So he's got his flashlight way over my head, and I'm looking in the flashlight. I see, I couldn't tell at first what it was, but there was a woman in a very old Stains nightgown, and she was not young, so it's not a young, attractive woman. It's an older woman in an old Stains nightgown. I don't know if she had clothes on underneath it. I'm assuming she didn't. I wasn't looking that close. She was crawling on her hands and knees towards us. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, what's on her elbows? Her elbows and hands were torn up from walking on the floor. So I thought that was strange. And as I'm looking at her, she's pushing beer cans to the side, like a wave, pushing them. So there was beer cans just piled all over her apartment. So she gets up, and if she charged us, we were shutting the door on her. I was not getting touching this woman. So my partner goes, what happened? So she told us that $10,000 was stolen from her. And I didn't want to make the joke. I felt like saying, I don't think you have $10 here in this apartment. So my partner says, look, lady, maybe one of your drunken friends told her. So she started really throwing the F-bombs at my partner and cursing at him. So then she gets back on the floor with her nightgown, and obviously still on, and starts crawling back to a back room. And we see her crawling, and she just goes into a bedroom somewhere. And we keep knocking, we're flashing with the flashlight. So I don't know what's going on. And then she crawls back. So I look to my partner. He freaks out when he saw her the second time. He runs to the elevator and starts hitting the buttons.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, are we going to go in? He goes, no. I'm not going in there. He was like scared of this woman because he didn't want to go near her. So I see the elevator door open. So I'm looking at this woman coming towards me. I'm looking at my partner. I'm like, I guess I'm going with my partner. I can't leave him. So we go in the elevator, and he used the term the Rocky Horror Woman. And the elevator doors closed, and we told the central there was nothing going on there. No money was stolen. The door closed. Never heard about it ever again.
Right. And I don't blame you guys. Yeah, that's
we weren't going
too bizarre. $10,000 is gone. Follow me to my lair, my suite. It's kind of yeah, no, that's okay. I think we're good. I think we're good when it comes to that. I think we'll pass, and I think everything's okay here. If you really have money missing, maybe we can hire an accountant. We can find it for you.
I think she wanted somebody to drink and talk with.
I think that's what it was. She was looking for.
That's what I really think it was.
Yeah, there's bars for that. Maybe she could come out in the daylight. That's probably it.
I don't think he had been out a long time.
That's for sure. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the more interesting jobs you've had. Internal affairs, which is one of them. It's a little bit of a different career path, and there are some different things that happen in internal affairs. We will talk just a little bit. I mean, you've got so many different, I mean, you have a whole different separate story about 9/11, but we'll talk a little bit about 9/11 and about why 9/11 pops up every single day of your life. I mean, you've cited that in the book. And we'll talk a little bit about 9/11, and particularly one of the memories that you say you have in the book. I also want to bring up Jerryseinfeld, who's mentioned in the book. We'll bring that up during this hour. I do have a particular love for Seinfeld, so I have to bring it up once during the show, and we'll also bring up some more famous cases that are mentioned in the book. We'll just bring them up briefly. I'd like people to read the book and find out more about some of the more famous cases that are brought up in the book. But you have had some brush with some famous cases. And it's, as you would tend to, being in the biggest city in America. But it's interesting how you've run into some of these famous cases and famous killers. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Our guest has an amazing, amazing book out there, folks, and I encourage you to go out and get a copy. We have a link in the description of this program. The name of the book is All in a Day's Work, An Officer's Accounts, 20 Years, NYPD. John Ferriso is our guest. When we come back, we'll talk internal affairs. We'll talk Jerryseinfeld. We'll talk about famous killers out there, and we'll talk a little bit about 9/11. It's coming up next here on the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. Welcome back to the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Our guest is John Ferriso. The book is All in a Day's Work, An Officer's Accounts, 20 Years, NYPD. I encourage you to go out and get it. We have a link in the description of this program so you can pick it up. And again, folks, there's some absolutely wonderful stories in there. There's some chilling stories in there, and there's some heartwarming stories in there. So I encourage you to go get that book right now as we're speaking with John. John, before we went to the break, I was talking a little bit about different positions you've had within NYPD. One of them I would think would be a pretty tough position, and that being internal affairs. You have the stereotypical, I think, TV version of internal affairs. Someone comes in a suit, pulls a cop aside and says, "You're in a lot of trouble, mister." Which I take it is probably not the job. If you could you tell my audience a little bit about what a typical internal affairs officer really does?
Yeah, internal affairs is a very interesting place. It's a place I never expected to work. I was already a sergeant, and I was putting in for different units, and I wanted to be a detective. What happened in the NYPD was I took the sergeant exam, became a sergeant, and then after about 3 years of being a sergeant, I realized I'd never been a detective, and I skipped the rank. So other departments might do it differently, but I actually skipped the rank. So, I was like, I've been doing patrol so long. I want to be an investigator. So there are supervisor investigator positions. And I ran into, I didn't have a big enough connection to get where I wanted to go. So I would put in for units, and people would tell me on the side, they'd be like, "John, you don't know anybody. You're stuck on patrol. And I'm like, oh, I got experience. I'm moving ahead here. I want to be a detective. This is what I want to do. This is what I watched as a kid. I watched Barney Miller as a kid.
Mhm.
You know, I watched those movies. So I've done the patrol. I've made all those arrests. I'm a supervisor in Midtown Manhattan, and I'm ready to be an investigator. So I put in for different units, and there was a thing called career path, which means that I don't know if any other department has it, which means that we call it throwing you to the wolves. Basically means that you throw yourself to the wolves and you hope for the best. So basically anyone can take you, but you can't really say no. So it's a city job. Yeah, it's one of those. If they want you, they just transfer you. So few people will put in for it because internal affairs has the pick at you. So I was like, what am I going to do? I got to make a move here. So I asked for all these units. No one wanted me. I went for an interview. Internal affairs was the only one interested. And I told my wife, once I go for this interview and I end up in internal affairs, my whole career will change. Everything from this day forward will change. And I explained to her that the rumor mill, we used to call it the rumor mill, cops talk, and everything's going to spin and everybody's going to know my business overnight. And sure enough, I got transferred. So when I went to internal affairs, I had no clue what they did. I knew they investigated police corruption, but what you said earlier, we would go to precincts. There is internal affairs in the NYPD is a very big unit. There was, I think, 600 investigators when I was there. So really? 30,000 police force, 600. So NYPD, because of past corruption issues, which are well known, they do not want corruption within the department. So, and they want investigators. Now I went as a sergeant, so there's detectives and cops there, and there's higher ranking. So I was like the middle position. So, like you said earlier, it's not like television. They have it right somewhat where we do go to the precinct in a suit. So what's interesting is everybody knows you're coming when you show up. So, I've walked into precincts that were busy and you get there and the place is a ghost town. So, and you can't pull somebody to the side and say you're in trouble. If the cop is in trouble, internal affairs tries to clear the officer. So we mean clear as in, an allegation gets made by a prisoner who's injured, a person on the street, someone arrested. You try to clear the officer, which means that you do an investigation into the officer to see if they did what they're being claimed happened to them by the other person. And very, very often we were able to clear the officer, which means that they did not commit the offense that they said. It could be like, he robbed me of all my money, he beat me up, he did everything to me. And then you get there and you find out they were robbed before the cops got there, they were beat up before the cops got there, and their property that they're claiming is missing is not missing, it's in the precinct somewhere and it's evidence. So, the police department takes them calls seriously. So you get there and you investigate it. Now, you're never going to tell the cop you're in a lot of trouble, this and that. No, you investigate it first and you clear the officer. If the officer doesn't get cleared, which means that there's some money missing or the injury did happen when the arrest, there's a long investigation. The reason there's a long investigation is because nobody wants to falsely accuse an officer, so you want to get every detail of that investigation. The NYPD puts a lot into those investigations, and I was part of them.
Yeah. So
a lot of work was done and a lot of resources. As a sergeant, I had more help in internal affairs to get things done than I did anywhere else I ever worked, ironically.
Really?
So, yeah, it was because there was resources. Because let me tell you, I would work in other units when, you had to go investigate these complaints and you wished for the best because you had very little resources, very little time. In internal affairs, you had the time and the resources. I think personally that helped the officers. Some might say it differently, but I can tell you from experience that helped the officers in the long run, that we put the time into.
Now, is that a public relations thing so that NYPD can go out and say, hey, you know what? Our backyard is clean, and they can go to the public and say, we know for a fact that we don't have corruption in the New York Police Department because we do have ample resources and we're taking care of business here. And therefore we're a sovereign nation, so to speak, that we can go forward into the public. We know we're protecting and serving, and we know that when we do these investigations are on the up and up, that we have resources, we have money allocated, we have enough officers to that are clean officers or good officers, there's no corruption whatsoever in the NYPD because of these past scandals? Is it truly a PR thing and a good face for the public?
Hard to say, because is it a good face? I don't know, because internal affairs isn't liked by other people who aren't in internal affairs, which is the other officers, and the public doesn't really know. So if it is a PR thing, it's past what I could comprehend in my supervisor position. That's coming from the higher ups, and I wouldn't have an answer to that. The resources are there, a lot of work's put in. There are high profile cases that hit the news, and does it help the department that internal affairs is help the department's image or hurt the department's image? I think they're definitely necessary, internal affairs, but to say it's helping or hurting the image, that's you would have to talk to someone very high in that unit to explain that one.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I find it fascinating. I mean, to make that kind of a move in your career. The other move in your career I find fascinating is missing persons. I mean, you want to talk about a gut check of a job where you have to, I mean, essentially put your heart and your soul into it and basically put yourself on the chopping block every single day, because you want to talk about a gut wrench of a job where you literally are taking your work home with you. I mean, you just can't drop it at the doorstep. You got to, especially, I don't know, John. I have so many words I want to put out there, and and then there's stuff I want to, I kind of don't want to put out there when it comes to the admiration I have for the work you do, because in that job, you have families that are really counting on you to find that person. But in your heart and soul, you have to know that there was only so much time for that person to be gone, and they are gone. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
they're not with us anymore. And to have to say to that person, we'll do our best, but in your heart and soul, don't you know that they're probably deceased and you're looking for remains? That's a recovery mission at that point. And
yeah, we had a lot of scenarios like that where there are unfortunate situations when there are tragic accidents and there are suicides, when the body's just simply, we have waiting to find it. And we would, I read enough suicide notes that was sent from the families of, well, here's my missing family member, and this is the letter they wrote. And they would send it to me, and I would read it, and we would, conduct investigations sometimes from that letter. And it was hard to tell the family that, the chances are slim of us finding this person alive. There were cases like that when, you wish for the best, and, everybody wants to know that, okay, their family member is in the emergency room. And even being arrested, you'd be surprised. They were like, I'm hoping he's in prison somewhere. That's how, desperate the families were sometimes. And it's sad, but we would find the bodies, in secluded areas, in trunks of cars, suitcases. And it was sad that, we had to do the investigation. And then I would, I'd have cases, and I'd go out, I'd investigate a case for 5 days, and I'd come back in after the weekend, and they'd be like, Sarge, we found that body. He was in the park the whole time. Yeah, we already notified the family. So, wow. It was at times it was hard to tell these families that we'll try our best, but there's only so much we could do. But the few times we gave them what they were looking for, which was the found family member, was definitely something that's why you do that type of work.
There's a case in the book, and I think you have to be a little bit of an intuitive person to do the job you do. You kind of have to, you have to see the behavior. You kind of have to be a couple steps ahead of them to know, I think this is probably where they went, or probably what they were intending on doing, and try to head them off at the pass to try to either find the body or find them, one or the other.
Sure.
There's a case in the book that you talk about a little boy who had been seen by a therapist at his school, and he was going to the garbage chute. Do you want to talk a little bit about this little boy and how, in your mind, the entire time you kind of knew what was going on with this kid?
Sure. His name is Patrick Alford. He's actually still missing. He went missing in 2010. He was 10 years old. That's the case that maybe you said before, you take cases home. After I retired, that's the one I still think about what had happened to this kid, and you hope for the best. So there was a lot of people involved in that case. We used to have a saying that it was cop term when someone under 10, even though he was 10, we used to say someone under 10 goes missing, the bells and whistles are going to go off, which means that that's taken very seriously because young children, if they're not with a family member and the family member drove them somewhere the way they were supposed to, children that age do not go missing for any more. They should never be missing for any more than a half hour, an hour at most. Mm-hmm. Every time that kid is not found in a half hour, an hour, you have to put a very bad scenario that could have happened, which could be a tragic action, it could be abduction. There's a lot of things. Could have got lost and, the weather. There's a lot of things going on. So he went missing, and I was the supervisor on that case, and there was a lot of people involved in that case. And there was some real experience on that case early on, and they had their theories. And so I had to go with their theories and follow their leads, and I investigated them. But then I eventually became the supervisor of that case. And detective that worked for me had it, and I started to believe that this was just, I'll never know 100%, but I started to believe that the key to finding him was the garbage that he was throwing out. And the only problem is the case had gone on for a while and a lot of other avenues were looked into. So, part of me wanted to do work. I can't go back in time and go back to what wasn't done in the beginning. So I wrote about that in my book, but to this day, he is still missing. And if you read that story in there, and you'll see my theory behind it, I still stand behind it. If I'm wrong one day on that, then great. Somebody came closure with that case. But I truly believe that that avenue of the garbage and where it went and why it went, the garbage went out, I feel that had a connection to his missing, and it could have been a tragic accident and not an abduction, or it could have been just a tragic accident that was overlooked at the time.
I think you're 100% right when it comes to him. I think you combined not only your intuition, but you backed it with facts about the boy, and you cared enough to look into his background, to get to know him a little bit through interviews, through getting to know the subjects around him, and getting to know him a little bit. And I think you nailed it right on the head. I think you really got inside his head, and I think you got inside the scenario, and you nailed it perfectly. And it's just a shame that nobody wanted to take your side and take that avenue and try to find this little boy. So I think that's all it came down to. So that's just
that's common in police work. One detective, Hollywood does get that correct sometimes. One detective will have one angle, one will have another, and if you're not the lead investigator, the other person makes a decision, and you could follow an angle for a very long time. Like even now, I do cold cases when people reach out to me, and when I get a cold case sent to me, which is similar to the scenario I just sent to you, when a nonprofit sends me the cold case, I don't look into what was done. The first thing I do is say, okay, this happened in 1978. How did this person go missing? And I don't ask what was done. If I don't know, I don't ask. Mm-hmm. I actually go out and write it all out, what I would do in 1978 at that moment and what I can do now. And then I find out what was done.
Yeah.
And then I match it up, because I don't want to put the idea in my head, well, they didn't do this. I want to say, wow, they missed this step. That's terrible. In 1978, they could have possibly found this person. And I don't like, we call it Monday morning quarterbacking. I don't like to do that, but there are times when, detectives have other casework. They have other things. Everybody's human. Mistakes are made. It's not that they were sloppy or didn't want to do their job. Just one little thing might have been missed. And I've worked on cases just recently that were cold cases where I will hopefully speak to the right person, but I'll tell the family, okay, this was missed. This needs to be done. And we're talking 15 years later, but because I consider a cold case after 10 years, 15 years ago, this is who you need to contact, and this is what you need to do. And then I put I tell them the resources they need to get it done. Because a lot of these cold cases I do nonprofit are not New York City. They're out of state. So I can't work on it without, there's a whole more, I have to work on it professionally in that state with other investigators, private eyes. So I will send it to somebody else, and I'll give all my experience and all my insight. And if another private investigator or active police officer solves that case and he gets the credit, I'm fine with it, because I did what I thought was right for the family. Yeah. Because I tell the family, I can't guarantee you anything, but I can guarantee you I'm going to look into it for you. Because some of these cases were not looked into in 25, 30 years.
And as you point out in the book, you started to kind of get the, I don't want to call it getting the bug for digging into cold cases, but you kind of got that interest into digging into cold cases and starting to wanting to not solve them, but getting a different perspective. Is that a good way of putting it? Getting a different perspective and maybe thinking that there's a different way of looking at them by even like looking at the Lindbergh case. If we start talking about different things, you find a box up on a shelf as you're going to have to do menial work inside what you call one puzzle plaza, which is one police plaza. And you run across the Lindbergh case, and it's to you, it's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating to us all, anybody who's involved in true crime. But were there different things about the Lindbergh case when you looked at it that made you go, oh, of course? Or did you see it from a different perspective as maybe what was in the files?
Well, I put that story in. It's called the Lindbergh case. Now, I found that file on accident because I was searching for something else in other files for something unrelated to missing persons, actually. And I wasn't even in missing persons yet, but I had that missing persons interest even then. And I accidentally found the case 1928. So the typing paper was different. Everything was different. It was, it looked like an old movie. The way it was an old box, an old paper, an old folder. This thing didn't look like it had been moved in a very long time. And I had to climb the shelf to get it. The reason I climbed the shelf is because it said Lindbergh baby kidnapping. I'm like, I got to see what this is. And my partner had to hold the shelf for me because I afraid it was going to crash down. So I climbed this metal shelf up, brought it down, and I opened it up. And I was amazed that detectives in 1928 were doing very similar work that's done now, which means that, they would get a tip. And the tip would be, listen, you got this missing kid. I'm watching it on television. My neighbor all of a sudden has a baby in the house. There's no kids. They don't have children. Detectives would have to go. And, obviously it was not the Lindbergh kid, and there was another tip about a woman overhearing a conversation on the subway, which could happen today in a serious crime. You overhear a conversation on the subway. It doesn't sound like they're talking about what they saw on the news. It sounds like they have inside information. I wrote about what the conversation is. So it was very interesting. I looked at it, even back then there were psychics calling, and which is funny because they still call even to this day. So, human nature is the same. And that case is interesting because even though the crime occurred in New Jersey, but the person convicted of, at the very least, having information for it. It's a very convoluted story. You'd have to look into it. The person convicted of having the ransom money basically lived in the Bronx. So that was the New York City connection to that case. So what I saw was not, I'm sure there are very big files. This story I'm telling you, I've been contacted by authors who are writing about it. So there's still people writing about it. Authors are contacting me about the information, and I send them the short story. I go, okay, read my short story. That's all I have. And, does it help their book? Who knows? But I basically tell them there is more information out there. If you find, I guarantee you there's more case folders in old police precincts somewhere in regards to that. Because that was a major investigation for that year. That was probably up until then, maybe even the crime of the century at that point.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. I'm going to take a little bit of a side journey, side jaunt here, because the other program we do here is a paranormal program, John, and I know you've probably seen some weird things on the job. And one of the weirder things that you mentioned here in the book has to do with a man who had a kind of a odd background, who commits suicide in his home, and you have kind of an odd experience that happens. We'll put it this way. It's a suicide in his home. I won't give away his background, but you mentioned that the TV lowers and then comes back up, right? And then,
yes, correct. That was
okay. Yeah. So I won't give away the entire story. I'll just ask you this about this. As you're talking amongst yourself, you're waiting for a supervisor to show up at the house.
Sure.
The volume keeps lowering and then coming back up, lowering and then coming back up. And you're talking to your eventual wife, Anna, on the phone, but she doesn't seem like she's too interested in a conversation. It's only when the supervisor shows up and you call the man Herman in the story.
Name's changed, yes.
Yes, the name is changed. And it's only when he shows up and says, Herman, quit playing with the volume of the TV, that the volume comes back up on the TV. this is my question on this, John. Have you seen incidents like this in your line of duty other than with Herman? And have you seen anything weird or strange like this other than with Herman in the line of duty? Something you would say would be strange, supernatural, paranormal, whatever in the line of duty. Bullets whizzing by, maybe missing you by an inch, where maybe you should have been taken out, things like that.
Well, I know you have your paranormal show you have, and I'm sure you have a lot of stories. Yes, you read that story, and I will say to the audience, when you pick up my book, I found the photo of him. It's not what anybody's expecting. Just read the story. I can't even tell you the name of it because I gave up the whole story. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
I changed his name because I had met later on family members of his. I changed his name. It was a suicide. It was sad. And yes, the volume on the television was going up and down. I can't explain why. And it was an old black and white television, and there's copy in there because the detective was getting annoyed and screaming his name out because of the television going up and down, which was the volume. I can't explain it. I don't know. I thought it was kind of an interesting story, the way the detective was angered about it and how we found the photos in the guy's house. You know, suicides are a sad part of police work when death occurs, and those things happen. Can I have any other story to give you? No. The closest I have is the story in my book, which is the last story. It's called One Phone Call 33 Years Later.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't read that one, I could explain it to you.
Oh,
I
read the entire book. Yeah.
Okay. Now that story, it's a very long and convoluted story. I'll make it very short, and anyone who's interested, please go to my book and get it. When I was a child, I was 9 years old, and I was very interested in police work, obviously, because I said that earlier. There was a case on the news, Eton Pates, famous missing child here in New York City. He's actually the first child on the half and half milk carton.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he was the first one on milk carton. That's when the milk carton kid started. So not only did I watch that, I developed a fear of getting lost or going missing as a child. And I would tell my parents, what if I get lost? What if I can't find you guys? My parents like, you're not going to get lost. I'm like, well, what if I get lost? And there was times, I was home alone. I would lock the doors, and I was afraid to go out for that summer because the news was portraying this kid in a very dark fashion of what possibly happened to him, which I found out later wasn't. And so, I got a little older. I was 9 when that case happened. He was around my age, and I forgot about it. And I went into the police work. And when I went to the missing person squad, I found out that they was investigating that case still. And they were still looking at leads 30 years later. So of course I could not tell my coworkers that I remember this as a kid. It scared me. I was afraid to leave my house. I developed a fear of going missing. I can't explain that. So the cops not only wouldn't believe me, they would make fun of me every day because that's cop humor. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So, as a police officer, you got to put up the shield. You got to, I'm not saying you're the tough guy, but you can't give them that information. They're going to abuse you every day about it.
Yeah.
So turns out it was a cold case, and I would see that case folder in the back office. And when I went and did the cold cases, I would come across the Pates case, and I would speak to the detective about it. And he had leads on it. It's a very interesting leads. And they started to do new work into it. The FBI got involved. Read the book. I'll explain why the FBI got involved. And everybody that day went out to dig up a basement in Manhattan where he went, close to where he went missing. I was held back that day as the supervisor, and I did want to go be part of the dig, but I wasn't. So it was me, one civilian, and one detective. We were in the office while they were at the dig. The phone rang in the office, and the civilian gave the detective the phone call, and I sat next to that detective. He was writing. I saw him writing Eton Pates. He looked at me, he said, we just solved the Eton Pates case. And that phone call solved the case and convicted the person at trial. Unfortunately, they never found the kid's body. The perpetrator, you could look it up, did explain what he did with him. But it was very strange that the case that scared me as a child came full circle. Not only did I work in the office that had it, I was part of the investigation, not the lead investigator, but I was supervised the phone call that convicted the person.
It came back to you. That's the thing. I mean, and maybe the whole reason it scared you so much as a kid is because somehow subconsciously you knew you were going to run across it as an adult.
I never thought of that. Wow. Okay.
I mean,
that's good, Tim.
Honestly.
Wow.
I mean, we talk about on the show, John, I don't know how much you consider time travel and all this other things or running into your future self or anything like that. But there's some people that subscribe to a theory that your future self can run back into your past self and vice versa. I don't know. It's a lot of confusing things that kind of blow your mind.
Yeah.
or even having a bit of ESP or somewhat sensing about what your future may entail, or having a bit of intuitiveness. And again, you having a bit of an intuitive sense, having been a missing persons, maybe you just intuitively knew someday, looking at that half and half carton, looking at Eton, knowing that someday I'm going to have something to do with finding that kid's killer. And
wow, that's interesting too.
I don't know, maybe I don't know. I mean, if I had the answers, I'd be a billionaire. But I'm not. But I'm just saying, maybe that just it tripped a trigger inside your head saying, and that can scare you as a kid. That can scare you because knowing that you're going to potentially face a kid's killer, that would scare the crap out of me as a kid. It absolutely would. Just saying.
Wow, that's interesting. And I wrote about in the book that I never pondered why I was there when that call came in, but if I had to go back, I would much rather been there when that phone call came in than being at the dig, because now I could tell this story the way I tell it. Yeah. And it's up to the audience to read. There's much more to that story when you read it.
Yep.
There's much, if the audience wants to read it and they could come up with it, but I don't have an explanation for it. But I put it in the story because I found it interesting. And that's a story that I always tell in a podcast because, obviously you want to talk about something that's interesting. And I find that out of all my stories, interestingly enough to tell other people.
It's incredibly interesting. And we'll mention this in passing because again, I want to point people back to the book, but there is a mention of, and we've talked ad nauseum about Rodney Alcala on the show. We've done a few different shows about Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. But there's a story about him in the book as well. I want to jump to a little bit about, and I want to talk about 9/11 because it's more than just a staple in your life. It has ruled your life. I think, for lack of any term in my vocabulary right now at this point, John, of trying to find words here for this. It was a seminal moment in my life, in everybody's life who's of that age, of our age. It is the moment where, I mean, let's face it, we had never been attacked on this soil ever. Yeah. And it shocked our country to see what happened that day. Anybody who was alive at that day, who can remember that day, was shocked to their foundation. But to be there, to see that moment in person, I can't imagine. To have done the work at ground zero, I can't imagine. But what you describe in your book is just chilling. And to work there day after day after day, I tell you, John, but then to sit down and then to put it into words. Every person that I've sat with on this program over 18 years and talked to about the subject, to me, I can't figure out, because I operate a little differently. I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve. And for me to put something into words, to me, it would be like reopening a wound. And some people say, no, it's cathartic. You get it out, you put it on the page, and it's like you're expelling it and it's out there and I can breathe again. I need to ask you this question, John. So you've written this short story outside of the book, and then there are different stories inside the book. There's I think maybe three or four that are different chapters inside the book. You've put this out there now. Is there more within you that you could write? One, and then two, how does it feel to get it out there? Is it cathartic, or is there, because you say you live with this every day. There's a memory every single day that comes up that you can still see it in your mind's eye, and I don't blame you, that every single day it's there. Is the wound still as fresh as it was 23 years ago? And is it cathartic to get it out on the page?
Well, what happened was after it happened, I'm talking after like the next day, I wrote about in that story, it's 17 pages, that me and my wife for a couple of hours, I told her I was going to the towers, and I hung up the payphone. And so for a couple of hours, she thought I was in the towers when it collapsed.
Oh God.
And so I talk about that, and it's, it was, I caused a lot of stress for my wife, and I had to really, this is before cell phones, I had to make a lot, and there was no phones working where I was because I was a half mile from the building when it fell. So, I came home, and the next day I was right back in Lower Manhattan, and I was back in it. There was no time to reflect, no time to say I can't do this, no time to this. I was ready to dig for survivors. I was given a different task the next day, which was directed traffic again, but I'm a soldier. You're going to give me a task, I'm going to take it. Directed traffic. And I came home, and my wife kept asking me if I was okay. Eventually, obviously, she did find out I was not in the towers, and became the family joke. Yeah, real smart, John. You call your wife to tell her you go to the towers, you don't call back for 5 hours. But it didn't exactly happen like that, but it was the family joke, and we still talk about it. So as the days after 9/11 started to slow down, slow down like everybody had a task, and there was a lot of resources coming to the city. So I was given different tasks at the family center, which is what I wrote about in the book. Mm-hmm. And my wife kept asking me, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm fine. But I was okay. It wasn't affecting me because I didn't have time to think about it. And then the images kept coming back. I kept seeing the images of people jumping. That was an image I couldn't get out. There was a woman waving a chair from the building as the smoke rose. And I just couldn't get that image out. But I refused to let it negative. I didn't even have children yet. I was married, no children. I refused to let it ruin me, because the terrorist whole idea was to cause mayhem in New York City. And how dare they? This is my city. I'm American. You can't just come here and do this. And not only that, you're not going to affect my life. So I started to tell my wife I was okay. It's no problem. I could handle it. And I went back to the city, and I saw some things even afterwards that were not easy to see. Family members that were looking. I watched children giving DNA for their lost family members. It was hard, but it was my job. I fielded a phone call from a very distraught woman, and she explained something very interesting to me on the phone about when she was in the building. So as time went on, I got promoted to sergeant right after that, and I wrote about this in my book. It's called Now I'm Reliving the Moment, which was, I was assigned to there was a viewing platform. Some of your audience might remember this. It was a viewing platform when it became a tourist attraction. Whether it was correct or not, it did become a tourist attraction, which strangely is to this day. But I will say that it's done very tastefully, it's done professionally, and it's done correct. So even though what it is, it's done correct. So I kept getting questions of where were you that day? And when I would tell them where I was, which was pretty much where I was standing at the moment, not that far away, but they were amazed. And I felt like, wow, these people are interested in my story. And I had a chance encounter with someone who kept asking me about people jumping from the towers. And I was like, everything just started reliving fast forward. And for some reason, I could remember that day, every minute detail. Like I described 9/11 to me like a movie that I was forced to watch. I couldn't shut off. And now I see this movie every day. Not in a negative way in any way. So right automatically, I started writing about it. I put it all down on paper, just like it was all in my memory, obviously. So put all down on paper. And then later on, I had it in a spiral notebook for a long time. And then once Microsoft Word came out, I put it right into Microsoft Word. And I started sending it to my friends. And my friends were like, wow, this is a great story. Maybe you should get it edited. So some people edited it, and a lot of people started asking me about the story. And I said to myself, I refuse to ever make money off this. If people are interested in my story and what I saw. Now, to your audience, I was not in the building, but I describe myself as not the front row seat, the second row seat, the third row seat, which means that I saw everybody in the second and the front and what they were doing while it was all happening. So I had that type of a view. I decided to write it down. I sent it to on the 20-year anniversary, I sent it to a local newspaper. They put it online, they edited it professionally, and I started to get a lot of feedback. So I just put it out to the world. This is my story. This is what I witnessed. Now, the reason I do it is because I wanted to tell the story. And plus, I don't want anybody to forget, because there's a lot of, my children were born after 9/11. There's a lot of people that are either too young, forgot, or don't want to remember it. Okay, if you don't want to remember it, fine. But there's a young audience that needs to know exactly what happens, not the Hollywood version, not some other version that you don't know. I'm telling you exactly what I saw that day and how I saw it. I tell that story differently. People can go, it's free online. I tell it differently than anyone else has told it, because I saw it from a little of far enough away where I could see what was occurring and how the planes hit and everything. And I hope that that story is viewed by a lot of people and people get the story, and it's free online, because I want as many people to see it as possible.
That's wonderful. Let me ask you this question, John. And you brought up a very good point, and then we'll lighten things up, and then we'll leave you today. And that's this. You brought up a very good point that you said it's not the way Hollywood portrays it. It's not the way it's even been portrayed in the last 20 years. There's one thing I've noticed that's really, really bothered me, because I know how it was portrayed in the news media 20 some years ago. I know what we saw live. I know what we were watching live, unfettered. What was being broadcast on screens, what you couldn't edit, what you couldn't edit out. And I know now what's being edited and thrown in our face. It seems different. Is it different? Is it different than what you saw, what you're being shown 23 years later?
Well, being that it was 23 years later, there was, people, I don't think anyone recorded on their cell phone. So some people might have had a video camera. You could see, if you look at it now, it's a lot of this, almost the same footage. If you notice it, a lot of it is the same footage from a similar angle. So, because of when it happened, it wasn't ancient history, but we didn't have the iPhone yet. So I think a lot of people are watching what the news saw, what the newscopters saw, what a couple of people on the street recorded. So we were more trustworthy of the news then. So people saw and they believed exactly what they saw. And I saw pretty much a lot of the stuff that the video was. Now, when it happened, I didn't have an iPhone and I didn't have a television, and the power was out in my part of Manhattan. So I didn't see what everybody was watching on the news. It took me about 2 days to watch.
Okay.
So everything I remembered was from my memory of what I saw, which was, I say, is imprinted in my mind. And it's what I like was yesterday. It is like it was yesterday to me, the images I saw. And that's why I figured to put it on paper, because there are other events in history that people wrote about and put down on paper. And I felt if I witnessed it, I was not going to internalize it. I was going to put it on paper and let other people read it.
A lot of what you saw, even some of the stuff you wrote about in this book, I remember seeing people falling from buildings live. I remember seeing that. You won't, of course, you're not going to see that in the tributes. You're not going to see that 23 years later. They're not going to show you. That's going to be edited out. And it, in some people's lexicon, that's not tasteful, and you wouldn't see that. Sure. But I know that it is a horrific day in our history. And I don't know. I don't know when it comes to you, is there ever a day where you think those memories stop, that you don't have a day where it doesn't run through your mind, where maybe you get to an age where the memories subside?
I don't think it ever will, because we're going on 23 years now. And when I work in Lower Manhattan, I work very close to where the incident happened. And not only that, my first job after retirement was the Empire State Building. So I started working at the second tallest building. So everybody's like, "Are you sure you're going to be working in this building?" I said, "Yeah, I could work there." What makes me think about it are odd things. It could be a large crowd of people running from the subway, which could just be people running to work. Construction on the side of a building definitely jars my memory. When I see a plane go in between two buildings, like just a plane in the distance goes in between two buildings in the city, triggers my mind. And
Yeah.
I've been down to ground zero, so I've already been there. And there are things that reminds me of it every day. Ironically, it was such a beautiful day in the city. The weather was absolutely perfect. You couldn't, if you were coming into Manhattan that day, besides what happened, it was the perfect morning, perfect, which meant that I don't think there was a cloud. It was not hot. It was not cold. It was sunny. It was September. So summer was over. So ironically, there are days when I'm in Lower Manhattan when the weather is perfect. I do think of it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I will ever. Like I said, I think about it every day, and it's been every day since 2001, and I will continue to think about it in some fashion every day.
Okay. Let's lighten it up a little bit before we leave you today. There's a short chapter in the book which kind of makes me laugh. You talk about what it is a lot of times when you have downtime as an officer in your car, things you might talk about, whether it be family, whether it be what's in the paper, what's going on in the news, whatever it is. One of the things that you bring up is at the time that you were an officer was Seinfeld, which was kind of what was hot.
Yes.
As far as a sitcom. I got to ask you, do you still have that love for Seinfeld? It's been 30 years. Can you believe it? It's been 30 years since that show was hot.
I can't believe it. Seinfeld, he had that dry humor, and most cops like Seinfeld, not all, but the cops that liked it, there's something clicked. And Seinfeld was popular with police officers. And I don't know what it was because there was no real police stuff ever on that show, but I guess it was a Manhattan thing. And I was working in Queens at that time, and we would go to work the next day and talk about the episode because for your younger audience, you had once a week to watch a show. So Seinfeld was on Thursday night. So Friday, you bet everybody was talking about Seinfeld.
Yeah.
So it was the same partner that was the guy with the Rocky Horror Woman. It was the same guy. And he was like me. He wanted to be a cop when he was a little kid. We grew up different parts of the city, different backgrounds, me and him, but we had a similarity where we both wanted to be cops. And we were talking about Seinfeld that day, and I remembered we were driving around, and there was an episode about Seinfeld about takeout Chinese food. So every time we saw a Chinese restaurant, we thought about it because Seinfeld was on a list for changing the order. So it was the ongoing joke, the Seinfeld. So obviously, like I said earlier in this podcast, that you're in the police car and you're talking about stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with police work. So there could be two cops. If you ever pass any of your audience who has no law enforcement experience, if you pass two officers in a car having conversations, 99% sure they are talking about something so obscure it has nothing to do with police work. Nothing, zero to do with police work. Because you can't really talk about police work when you're there at work, but you can't stress yourself out like that. So we're talking about Seinfeld. And prior to that, we had described, me and my partner, that when we were kids, he was like me. He wondered what cops were talking about in the car.
Yeah.
So we were driving down in Queens. Queens Boulevard is a very busy avenue. Thousands of cars will pass like in the same spot within 10 minutes. And it's fast, it stops, it goes. They even called it the Boulevard of Death because so many people get hit by cars there. So Queens Boulevard was a dangerous boulevard. So we were driving, and this is where cop humor comes in. And another car pulls up next to us, and we were like, I don't remember the guy's name. We're like, hey, Johnny, what are you doing? What's going on? Did you see Seinfeld last night? Yeah. So we're on Queens Boulevard. He parked, I parked. We're having a conversation about Seinfeld. And we noticed that cars are like not on the sidewalk, but they're just squeaking by us where the mirrors just missed. Like if someone had a Bronco or an SUV, they weren't getting through. And every car passed by like, wow. You could see them looking at us like, my gosh, something's going on. And one woman was like, oh my gosh, am I pulling up into something? And then after a while, I'm looking at my partner and I see headlights in my the rear window of the police car. We had traffic blocked up all the way miles. So I look at my partner and he's like, yeah, we got to move. So he puts it in park and we stopped talking about Seinfeld. We drove away. We disrupted 5-10 minutes of people's life. Well, here I am talking about it all these years later. So, and my partner looks at me and he says, John, do you remember when we were kids? Now, we didn't grow up, but we told the story that we wondered what guys were talking about in the police car. And I go, yeah, I wondered it too. Yeah. So I'm sure that there were cops years ago having very similar conversations about Happy Days or something.
Probably, right?
Seinfeld was popular, and it clicked with police officers in his humor. His dry humor, for some reason, clicked with us. I don't explain it, but 30 years later, I'll still watch Seinfeld. Yes.
I'm sure he'd be tickled to know that.
Yes, if anybody can relay this message to Jerry Seinfeld, please do it.
There you go.
I'll give him my book for free.
There you go. I'm sure he'd love to have a copy. That's for sure.
And I'll sign it for Jerry.
There. Wow. Look at that. I can't see how he'd pass it up. That's all.
Yeah.
So John Ferriso, I want to thank you so much for being on the program again. FerrisInvestigations.org is where you can find John. John he's helping nonprofit organizations to investigate cold cases throughout the nation. He's doing corporate security and intel work. He also is an author. He's writing his own, not only with this book, you have the short story about 9/11. Are you working on other books as well besides this one?
Yes, it took a little different turn. I'm currently writing about how a screenwriter or an author can put a missing person investigation into their story, not only putting it into their story using the correct procedures, police procedures regarding a missing person case, because I read a lot. And when I read about missing person cases, authors are getting it wrong, unfortunately, many times. And so not only is it wrong, sometimes it's just not as bad, it's in the wrong order, which would be like they have a missing person investigation and they have the crime scene put up right away, and they have the wrong people in the crime scene. They have private eyes in the crime scene. They have civilians in the crime scene, or they have, the detectives on the scene way too early. And a lot of people don't realize the detective sometimes doesn't get to the scene quickly. He's called to the scene. Usually it's a rookie cop who's like, hey, I found body parts. I just put up a crime scene. Somebody's got to get over here. And if there's body parts in the street, or not in the street, it's a bad example, in the park somewhere, it's not like those things have probably been there a long time. So yeah, the detective's going to get there, but I don't think he's going lights and sirens. So, I put that in, and, I speaking with authors from, Sisters in Crime, and they'll send me their manuscripts. And when I look at their manuscripts, I'll tell them what they have correct in their next book, which would be, okay, wow, you got this right. This investigation, you got this correct. Or I'll tell them, okay, you're talking about fingerprints being taken from a body. That doesn't have to happen within 30 seconds. That could wait. You could do that later. That's going to go to the medical examiner's office, the bodies. So I said, you have it right, but you have it in the wrong order. So I'm writing in my book what an author can put in that is correct and interesting. And it's a guide, and it's an easy guide, which means that I'm not telling a whole novel. You are interested in cop humor regarding a missing persons investigation, you go directly to my chapter on cop humor regarding a missing persons investigation. And an example of that would be, I had a detective who worked for me who was assigned a case, went to the door, no answer at the door. He couldn't find the woman. He made the report, left. The family called the next day and said, my mother's in the garden. Did anybody see her? She had died in the garden. So we closed the case, and the ongoing joke with the detective was every time he went somewhere, we were like, make sure he checks the garden. No matter where he went, it was always the joke that he had to check the garden of where he went. So, and anyone who worked with him were like, you have to make sure. They're like, I know, he's got to check the garden of the house. So that's an example of cop humor that made it in. So if somebody could take my story and write an awesome book, I think it's great. Take my stories, take my experience, put in your book, put in your screenplay. And I would love to hear about it down the line. Like, I put that story in. That's why I'm writing it. So you could put it in your story and do well with it. Take my experience and you write it.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, All in a Day's Work and Officers' Accounts, 20 Years NYPD is available right now. We have a link in the description of this program. John Ferriso, I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Great, Tim. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Folks, it's time now for us to lighten things up a bit. It's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals.
It's crayon news story time.
What happened with this dude, Christ Bearer? I heard he cut his penis off and then jumped off a balcony.
Suspect pulls gun from butt, shoots twice at Denver police.
What is your emergency?
I need help.
And what's the problem?
I'm too high.
You're too high?
Yeah.
It's that time you've all been looking forward to, the time where we do some dumb crime, stupid criminals. It's time to start harshing other people's gigs and calling them out as far as their intelligence level in the criminal sector. I guess I'm getting too technical about it. And to do that, we need a co-hostess. So we bring in one of the best in the world. We bring in the intelligent, the witty, the funny, and the beautiful Jessica Freeburg. Hi, Jessica. How are you today?
Hey, Tim. I'm great.
Oh my gosh, you sound wonderful. That's the other thing.
I know.
You got a bit of a tech upgrade there, lady.
I did. I figured it was time to get an actual real microphone instead of my little earbuds.
Yeah, no, it sounds wonderful. It sounds wonderful.
Yay.
Yeah. I mean, you're blowing my ears out here. I got to adjust your level.
Oh, no.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good on your end. So no, we're ready to rock here. We have quite the dumb crime, stupid criminals today. I'm going to tell you, today was a little bit of a fishing expedition. I think with the middle of summer comes heat and a little bit of laziness in the criminal element.
That could be. Do you think maybe they're taking vacations?
I think so. I think this is cabin season for criminals. Yeah. I think they kind of, they sleep in later, they get all cozy in their bed, and
They're off fishing.
Yeah, you go up to the cabin for a week and no, probably not. I digress. And there's a lot going on in the news. I suppose they're big news watchers, the criminals are.
They might be. You never know. I mean, they don't strike me as big news watchers, but they could be.
If I were a criminal, I'd probably be watching a lot of news just to get the 411 on what's going on out there.
See if your face is on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see my name in the lights. That's just me though. I'm a little vain that way. We'll start off in Southern California here, Jess. That's what we're going to do today. I like to start it off with something that kind of splashes, right? A little something that, not literally, because this is kind of a literally splashes type of story, but something that kind of hits hard. And this one really hits hard. It has to do with a domestic dispute in Southern California that ended in a samurai sword attack.
Oh, no.
People, just put the weapons down. If you're going to fight with these two fists. Isn't it Friday where not John Singleton? Good God, no. What's his name? Is it Craig? The guy who said Craig, Ice Cube's dad. He says, "You fight with these two fists, Craig." Right?
That's right.
Put the gun down, Craig. Right? And he tells him, "You got to fight with these two fists, Craig." No, that's all I remember of Friday. I was high too. Weren't we all back then?
I think so. I mean, I saw the Fridays. There's 2 or 3 of them, right? How many are there?
There's 3 of them.
Yeah, I saw them all.
Yeah. My nephew, who's getting married this fall, he was a little kid at the time, and he used to call the third one "Holy Moly Christmas Donut" or whatever it was. Holy Moly Donut Shop. That's what it was. He used to call it Holy Moly Donut Shop. He used to say, and he used to look at my stepdad and say, "Grandpa, put on Holy Moly Donut Shop." That's all I knew the third Friday by for the longest time. Holy Moly Donut Shop.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't fighting with samurai swords. What is it with these samurai swords lately?
I don't know. One woman was killed and 2 others were hospitalized after what appears to be a domestic dispute that prompted an attack with a samurai-style sword Thursday afternoon in San Dimas. Say that 10 times fast. Samurai-style sword attack in San Dimas.
I cannot. I'm just going to let you do it.
Wasn't San Dimas where Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure happened?
Oh my gosh. It might have been.
Whoa, San Dimas.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it was. Yeah.
You have a good memory, sir.
Well, I'm trying. Deputies with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department were called to the intersection of South Huntington Avenue and Bassett Court just before 3:30 p.m. on reports of a rescue needed. And if you're being attacked with a samurai sword, you definitely need to be rescued. That's for sure.
Yikes.
In video footage obtained by KTLA, a lone woman with blood on her right leg and hands was seen holding the sword near a parked U-Haul box truck in the 300 block of South Huntington Avenue as authorities arrived on the scene. As deputies approached, the woman waved them down. It appeared as if she wanted to show them the sword, but immediately laid the weapon down and raised her hands when ordered to do so by deputies, which is probably the best thing she could have done all day. I actually have pictures of her. Here, Jess. I know, high tech. Look at that. She's just standing out there. She's got the sword by her side and decides, maybe I should lay this bugger down.
Yeah, a little blood on her legs.
Yeah, a little blood on her legs. Just has a samurai sword at her side, and she just decides, you know what? Maybe I should just put this thing down right now. So lady's got the samurai sword, decides to put it down. Here's the quote. That female then directs them to the residence on the street where the deputies find an additional female also suffering from lacerations, who was later pronounced dead at the scene.
Oh, no.
So somebody knew how to wield it. Somebody knew how to take it. That's the that's the narrative in this deal. That, according to Los Angeles Sheriff's Department Lieutenant Daniel Vizcarra at a news conference. As they continued through the residence, an additional female was found in the residence unharmed, who was also transferred to a local hospital due to a medical emergency. According to reporting by KTLA's Rick Chambers, the emergency may have been a heart attack. I'd have one too if you're swinging a sword at me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I'd drop right there. As far as what sparked the deadly violence between at least two of the women, authorities say it is unknown at this time because they only speak Mandarin Chinese, which has slowed the investigation down.
I'm shocked it's a woman who was yielding it. Usually it's a guy.
Well,
It's usually a naked guy in Florida, but
yeah, you're right. We went to the left coast this time for this. The preliminary investigation suggests that there may be a family connection, but again, because of the language barrier, we have not confirmed that, Lieutenant Vizcarra said. Aerial footage from Sky 5 showed the area on South Huntington Avenue where the U-Haul truck was parked and the samurai sword was in the street, cordoned off with yellow crime scene tape. I always like my samurai swords with a little bit of yellow tape on them. It makes them festive. I don't know. Just kind of does. KTLA learned that interpreters have been sent to the scene in the hospital to help investigators learn more about what exactly happened. Detectives say there's no further threat to the community, especially if you went over to help them move. I'm just saying, by God. Here's a picture, Jess. This is no little sword right here. That's what it looked like lined up next to the truck.
oh my gosh, that is so huge.
Thank you. That is no sword right there. That is a long sword.
I just don't even know how you swing that. It's giant.
Well,
I'm saying so many things. I'm waiting for you to say that's what she said.
yeah, well, that's what she said. But yeah, it takes some practice. That's for sure. Yeah. And I admire any woman who can wield that sword and swing it, if you know what I mean.
I would say.
Yeah. But hey, takes all kinds. But she, I don't know, maybe I don't know. I have nothing. I was going to say something clever, but it's not so clever now that I mull it around in my head. Because it doesn't.
Well, it's kind of wild though.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, as a woman, that would not be my first weapon of choice.
No.
No.
If you're trying to get somebody out of the house, what are you using?
What am I using? I don't know, maybe like a butcher knife, but I don't want to like be wielding a giant sword that's as long as my whole body around. I mean, I feel like I'd hurt myself, accidentally cut my own leg off.
But if you're skilled with that thing, I mean,
I guess.
Some people, when it comes to, swords like that, they just wield them like it's part of their body,
Yeah, maybe she's had training. I don't know. Good point.
Although if she's a little bloody, maybe not.
I don't know. I'm a farm girl from Iowa. I'd be more likely to come at you with a pitchfork.
Okay, that is a little the pitchfork would be enough to make me want to go home and stay there. I'll give you that. Well, here's something a little less, a little more mundane, a little less dangerous than a samurai sword, Jess. A man menaces another man with a hammer, but you never bring a hammer to, again, a knife fight. He ends up getting stabbed. See,
Oh,
here's the thing. This is why when we fight, we put our dukes up. You put the old fists up, and you hope that they put their fists up. You don't, go, I got a hammer, and they go, I got a knife, and you go, oh shit, and then you run. Yeah, because sometimes you go to play poker and you end up losing badly. You know what I mean, Jess?
yeah.
We go to Rochester, New York, where a 61-year-old man was stabbed on Friday night after police say he menaced another man with a hammer. Rochester police responded just after 9 p.m. to Sawyer Street, where they found the stabbing victim. Police say he menaced a 30-year-old man who stabbed the older man in self-defense during a domestic argument. 61-year-old suspect was taken to Strong Memorial Hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. He'll be taken to jail when he's discharged. Here's the lesson here, kids. If you think you're Thor and you're wielding a hammer, chances are someone might have a bigger weapon. Just saying.
Yeah. We just shouldn't fight.
Yeah. Choose your weapons carefully.
Just be nice to each other.
Yeah, just be nice. Maybe bring a beer. There's a good idea.
Yeah.
Bring a
That's
beer.
how you resolve your differences.
Right. And then if they still charge you, crack the beer bottle and then stab them. See, there's the deal, Jack.
There you go.
It's a weapon or a peace offering. Weapon or
right.
peace offering. I don't know. I
Oh,
got nothing. Our next story has to do, actually, this next story was sent by one of our listeners, Tony. And by the way, if you have a story for us for Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals, you can send it to tim@darknessradio.com. South African police discover a multi-million-dollar meth lab on a farm. Speaking of being from Iowa, you ever grown meth out there on the cornfield? Is that one of those?
no, sir.
Oh, oh,
We were not cooking that. We were making jam,
oh,
canning some tomatoes, but never meth.
never meth, huh? It cooks up just as well as tomatoes, I guess, from what I hear. I mean, you just put it right there on the stove next to the tomatoes when you're canning them.
Probably more lucrative, but can also get you in more trouble.
It can. And this, I don't know if this is the actual tomato making part or the meth making
Oh,
part.
wow. That's quite an operation if that's what they're using for meth.
Yeah, I'll say. Wow. I got to think that you'd be able to smell the meth from further away than the tomato canning operation. We go to South Africa, where police in South Africa arrested 4 people, including 2 Mexican nationals, after uncovering a multi-million-dollar drug manufacturing lab on a farm in the country's north. The South African Police Service, or SAPS. I don't know that you want to be known as that. Here comes SAPS. And the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, commonly known as Hawks. So you've got SAPS and Hawks.
Hawks is much tougher.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, I'd rather be a hawk than a sap. It's a funny country, isn't it? Although they do, they gave us Charlize Theron, so they got something going. So you got saps, you got hawks. They aided the property in the town of, oh wow, this is a name, Roblersdal. After receiving information suspicious activity was taking place there. That, according to SAPS, they said that in a statement. After searching 4 structures on the property, police found large quantities of chemicals used to make illicit drugs, including acetone and crystal meth, with an estimated street value of 2 billion South African rand, or $109.4 million. That's all that 2 billion South African rand is worth?
Wow.
That's
not a good.
I always thought Krugerrand were worth a lot of money.
I don't know my currencies, but that doesn't seem like a very fair trade.
No. 109.4 million or 2 billion South African rand. That's not a very good exchange rate. Oh, well. The 4 suspects detained on Friday include the farm owner and 2 Mexican nationals, according to the police service, adding that the Hawks are not ruling out the possibility of further arrests. What makes this different from other seizures is the involvement of Mexican citizens. I believe it is Katigo Mogale, who is the national spokesperson for the Hawks, told Reuters, adding, "It means that our task has just become very difficult. It is not clear if the drugs were seized and intended for South African market or overseas." The Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs said its embassy in South Africa had not received the respective consular notification and is in contact with local authorities to find out the details of the case and the alleged Mexicans involved. The suspects will appear at Robersdal Magistrates Court on Monday on charges of manufacturing, dealing, and possessing illicit drugs. In January, police said around 131 drug labs have been shut down across the country since 2019, adding that during the festive season last year, more than 19,000 people were arrested for drug possession. It's a lot of people in South Africa getting high.
That is. That's a big statistic.
That's not a big country. South Africa, 19,000 people getting high in South Africa is like, I don't know, like 1 million people in Minneapolis getting high. I mean, that's a lot of people getting high. So far this year, the Hawks have discovered 10 secret drug labs and arrested 34 people as they continue their war on drugs in the country. South Africa is dubbed as potentially one of the largest meth consumer markets in the world. Researchers at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime highlighted in the 2021 report. It was also described by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime last year as an attractive drug transit country. The UNODC attributed the nation's growing market for synthetic drugs to its porous borders, as well as its geography and international trade links. You know, you hear the propaganda about our borders being porous.
Yeah.
19,000. I mean, that's staggering. 19,000 people arrested for drug possession in this tiny country.
And those are just the ones who got arrested.
Right.
Imagine how many people weren't caught.
Right. Those are just arrests. You're right, Jess. Those aren't the people getting high. Those are the people getting arrested, actually getting caught.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
That's out of control. Wow. Speaking of out of control, we're going back to Florida.
Yes.
Yes. We're coming back to our shores here, Jess. St. Peter's man accidentally, we got the trifecta here. I found a Florida story where we wanted the perfect Florida story. So when I say trifecta, Jess, what do you think of when you think of Florida?
Well, someone naked.
Oh, we might not have the trifecta here. Hold on. Was he naked? He may or may not be. Okay.
All right.
Okay. But naked, there's probably a
Drunk.
Drunk, yeah. Drunk
yeah.
is involved. You got it. That's on our bingo card.
Definitely a weapon involved.
Yes, that's involved as well. And there's probably a dispute with a roommate, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. That's all in here. So like the perfect Prego sauce, it's in there. So St. Petersburg man accidentally was shot, killed while drinking and showing guns to his roommate.
Oh, no.
So we got it. I think we pretty much filled up the bingo card and we're ready to collect our cash. A 50-year-old man died on Sunday afternoon after accidentally being shot in the chest, according to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Deputies say they went to the 8100 block of 49th Avenue North just before 5 p.m. after receiving reports that a man had been shot. According to the Sheriff's Office, deputies found Kevin Bishop lying on the floor inside the residence with a gunshot wound to the chest. Investigators say his roommate, 57-year-old William Tompkins, was also at the scene. It's at this point I need to stop because you've got two men, 50 and 57 years old, who are roommates.
Yeah.
It's not saying a lot about their lives.
You're not in college, so it's not a college roommate situation.
No, And why are they fascinated with their firearms at 50 and 57 years old?
I don't know. Passing the time, I suppose. Hot. They couldn't go outside.
There's two guys who aren't getting laid. I'm just saying that's pretty much the deal right there.
You might be right.
Yeah. According to detectives, Bishop and Tompkins were drinking alcohol. There's a shock. Well, Bishop showed Tompkins multiple guns that he owned. And I got this here gun right here. This one's a good one. See this one? That's a good one. I got this here gun right here. This one's a good one. This one shoots straight. And look at this one. I got this one here. This one shoots too. What is there to show? Unless you take it to a range, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Here's the barrel.
Yeah.
Here's the trigger.
This one here takes bullets. I mean, what? Huh? Okay. Bishop then told Tompkins that all the firearms were empty. Oh, famous last words. Oh, they're all empty.
Not so much.
God bless him, Mr. Bishop. During the investigation, detectives learned that Tompkins and Bishop both pointed guns at themselves.
Why? That's so dumb.
And each other, Jess. So they're like,
Oh,
bang, bang. Look at that's funny. Bang, bang. They're empty. So they're pointing guns at themselves and each other while pulling the triggers, but they didn't fire. Come on. No.
gun safety 101.
Yeah. They only would have had money for hookers. PCSO says Bishop took a Glock 21 from Tompkins, and as Tompkins' fingers released from the gun, Bishop grabbed it and was accidentally shot in the chest.
Oh, it's tragic.
I didn't sense a lot of empathy there, Jess. It was like,
It's tragic. I was going to say, and really stupid, but I feel bad.
future Darwin Award winners on our program. According to investigators, Tompkins left the home, called 911. Deputies say Bishop was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. The sheriff's office says his next of kin was notified. They then said, who inherits the guns?
Now that guy has to find a new roommate.
Yeah. Who's going to pay the other part of the rent? The investigation, by the way, is still ongoing. I don't know how much more you need to investigate. Two guys pulling triggers at each other. I don't think there's a third shooter. Just saying.
Yeah, pretty cut and dry. Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. We're going to stay in Florida for the next story here, Jess.
Wonderful.
Yeah. We're going to Walgreens. Are you a big fan of Walgreens?
Ooh, I like Walgreens. You got a little bit of everything there.
That's true. It's kind of your one-stop shop for whatever you need. You know what I like from the Walgreens? It's kind of the diabetic savior. Those little the soft puffy mints. That kind of
yeah, those are good.
Yeah, they come in a tub, like a 5-pound tub. I don't know why. Probably so you can, I don't know, die in a coma, a diabetic coma. I don't know why they come in a 5-pound tub. But they're good to have by the bedside in case you need them. I don't know why I'm mentioning that, because I need to find something redeeming at Walgreens other than medical supplies and prescriptions.
Band-Aids and wart remover.
Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, it's fun. And vitamins. Florida man waits 5 hours in Walgreens, Jess, in their restroom before going on an after-hours junk food raid. That's the other thing that's in the freezer. You can get yourself 4 of those White Castle sliders and some ice cream.
Yeah, they got a little bit of everything in there. I mean, honestly, get some of your groceries if you need them, if you're not too picky.
Well, you can't be picky because it's like Stouffer's lasagna and a couple of those crappy off-brand meals and like 18 brands of ice cream. And what else in those freezer sections? They don't keep a lot.
Hot Pockets.
Oh, Hot Pockets. That's right. Thank you for reminding me. Hot Pockets.
That's all you really need right there.
That's true. Oh, and they do have Lunchables. They have Lunchables, and they've got and they've got cheese and bologna and some hot dogs.
There you go. You're set.
Yeah. Well, no wonder the guy stayed in Walgreens.
Hiding out in the bathroom.
It's a white trash buffet in the freezer section. So in the fridge section, and you got all the soda and possibly some beer you need, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
My God, it's a white trash smorgasbord. Christopher Morgan was arrested long after closing time with his pocket stuffed full of candy, by the way. He went over to the candy section. He probably went and grabbed one of those big tubs of puff mints that I was talking about. I mean, that alone's worth $5.99.
Yeah. That was too big for his pockets. He had to shove that down his pants.
You're assuming he had that much room in his pants. I'm just saying. Probably didn't have room for more than I don't know, probably like a Laffy Taffy. Florida man went on a late night junk food and cigarette splurge. Of course, there's cigarettes. So yeah, he had to roll that up in the sleeve. Inside a closed Walgreens store after purposely locking himself into a restroom, police say. The man, Christopher Morgan, I got a picture of him to show you, was arrested by police just after 3 a.m. on Monday at a Walgreens in New Smyrna Beach with his pockets stuffed full of candy. New Smyrna Beach is a city south of Daytona Beach, a surf hub known for its miles of white sand beaches. There's also a strip club there known as Lollipops. I only know that.
I like that name.
I know. I only know that because I had a friend who used to dance there. Police say that CCTV footage shows Morgan entering the store hours earlier at 9:40 p.m., where he went into a restroom. Let me show you a picture of Christopher Morgan here. Here's the candy bandit right here.
Oh,
Look at him looking like he
looks
needs
pretty normal.
He does look pretty normal, doesn't he? He kind of looks like he looks like a type 1 diabetic. Just saying. If one would look like a type 1 diabetic. The footage then shows him leaving the bathroom at around 2:40 a.m., long after the Walgreens closed at 10 p.m. He waited around for 4.5 hours?
Why would he wait so long?
Maybe he truly passed out on the floor.
That's just weird.
That is weird. So 4.5 hours later, he comes to and he walks around the store grabbing various items, including food and cigarettes. Morgan made no attempts to exit the business or call for help to get out, according to police, indicating that he had hidden the restroom intentionally in order to later steal the items. Maybe he didn't have anywhere to go.
That could be.
So here's
Which
the
is
item.
sad.
It is sad, yeah. Here's the items he took here, Jess. You ready for this? Morgan feasted on Tostitos spinach dip, not the first thing I'd steal from Walgreens. It's probably been there for about 1.5 years because nobody goes to Walgreens looking for Tostitos spinach dip.
Not my first choice.
No, can you imagine how long that's been sitting there?
Probably a while, but I think it's canned. Or in the glass jar. It can probably be there for a couple of years.
Yeah, he did grab some chips with that, by the way. He got some Reese's chocolate, so good for him. Ghirardelli chocolate bars, so he does have finer taste.
Solid choice.
Washed it down with some Dr. Pepper. At least grab some water, cleanse the palate a little bit. He also treated himself to some Newport cigarettes because the cigarettes of the upper class, the Newport. Dear God, Christopher. Police responded, dear God, Christopher. I sound like one of the Sopranos. Police responded to the scene after an alarm in the store went off. And when they arrived, they spotted Morgan through the front doors of the store, taking a pack of cigarettes from behind the counter. That's when he finally worked up the nerve. Just saying. Body cam footage released by police shows Morgan inside the store wearing a white t-shirt and sunglasses on his head. Of course he was. You don't want to wear him inside at night. That's a Corey Hart song. He was seen holding several items, including a bottle in his hand, as the alarm rang out in the background. Seemingly playing dumb with police, a confused-looking Morgan tells police, I came in to use the bathroom, and says he thinks the time is probably 11 o'clock. at 2:40
Oh,
morning.
he must have been on something.
One officer asked if Morgan anyone else. That doesn't make sense. One officer asked Morgan if anyone else was inside the building. He said he didn't know. Sure. Police cuffed Morgan and found an open Reese's bar and a package of cigarettes on him. Police say Morgan resisted efforts to place him in the back of a patrol car, and he then spat on an officer after being placed in the car. That's going to get the hood put on you. Don't do that.
Yeah, then you really get in trouble.
Yeah. And then the officer said, "You smell like Newports and chocolate."
And a little bit like spinach.
Yeah, a little bit like spinach. What the hell have you been eating? Like rancid spinach. You didn't take the spinach dip, did you? Because that's been there for like 3 years. Ew. He was arrested for burglary of an unoccupied structure, larceny, petty theft, resisting an officer without violence, and battery on a law enforcement officer. He has 2 prior convictions of larceny, petty theft, according to police. So this isn't his first go-around at the Walgreens, evidently. Evidently, he's tried this before, Jess.
He's a repeat offender.
Yes, he is. Our next story has to do with a man who's mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. In fact, he's so mad, he went from Atlanta to South Carolina to commit his crime.
Oh, pretty angry.
He is pretty angry. Here's how angry he is, Jess. He didn't take his anger out on a building. He didn't take it out on a car. He didn't take it out on a major structure. He took it out on a flagpole.
Flagpole.
That's right. They say the South will rise again. Well, it was already up. This man wanted to take it down. We go to South Carolina, where a 23-year-old man was arrested for trying to remove a towering South Carolina eyesore. The man drove 3 hours from Atlanta, Georgia to South Carolina, where he allegedly tried to remove a gigantic Confederate flag that flies on a property adjacent to Interstate 85. That, according to police. Cops responded Saturday night to a 911 call about a trespasser climbing a fence near the towering Spartanburg County flagpole, which looms over the busy nearby roadway and was erected by a local chapter of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Police say they encountered 23-year-old James Daniel, I believe this is Blitch, which if you take the L out of Blitch.
Oh.
Yeah. Just saying. He was found carrying a Dremel and tool bits when he was arrested. Blitch reportedly told cops that he did not agree with the Confederate flag and wanted to lower it. Well, a lot of us don't agree with it, but we don't go around taking people's flags down. Asked about a reported vandalism the prior night near the flagpole. Blitch, who was described as upfront and cooperative, denied involvement. Charged, well, at least admit it. I mean, if you did the crime, do the time, right?
Own up to it.
Yeah. Charged with 2 trespassing counts. Blitch spent a night in jail before being released from custody Sunday afternoon after posting all of $465 cash bond. Blitch reportedly told cops that he had planned to drive back to Atlanta after lowering the flag. Blitch's address is listed in court records as his family's stately home in the upscale Buckhead neighborhood in Atlanta. How nice. He kind of looks like he's a little pampered. I'll show you his picture here in a minute.
So I wonder how he even knew about this flag and why I mean, I get why he defended him, but like a state away, like he had to drive across state lines.
My guess, if it's the Sons of the Confederacy, he read it online and just decided he was going to take up the cause.
Oh, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Blitch's parents are both lawyers. This is how he learned. His father is a solo practitioner, while his mother is a senior counsel at the Coca-Cola Company and a board member of the Georgia Justice Project, criminal justice reform group. So he was just in the family business. he
This
was
kid has a good life, I think.
so he was just going to take it upon himself. Look at the baby face on this kid.
He does look young. He said
Yeah.
he's 24. He is kind of still a baby.
Yeah. So he was just like, Mom, Dad, I want to go take down that Confederate flag in South Carolina. Cover me. They're like, sure, son. He's 23.
Oh, 23.
Yeah. And they're like, sure, son, you go do whatever you're going to do. And they just shook their head. No way. No, you bring bail money. That's all they said. Just bring bail money and you'll be all right. And they left him out to dry, which is probably a good thing. You got to learn his
How
own.
you learn?
Yeah, that's how you learn. You get caught and you get hung out to dry by mom and dad. Right? Speaking of being left out to dry, holy cow. Let me ask you this, Jess. I mean, you don't have to answer this question because it's a little personal, but what's the biggest credit card bill you've ever run up in a month?
Oh, gosh. I mean, in a normal month, 0.
Yeah, I mean,
But in college, when I figured out I could have credit cards and I could buy all these clothes and pay for them later.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe a couple thousand. I had great clothes though.
Oh, I bet. Some of us, I mean, in college, some of us went ape shit. Pardon the language.
Yeah.
I mean, some of us went nuts.
Yeah. Who knew you had to pay it back?
Yeah. I mean, wasn't it
Plus all that interest.
Yeah. Wasn't it free money? Well, there's a guy who should probably know better. And he is a superintendent of a school in California. I believe this is California. Yes, El Cajon, California. He was given a credit card by the Cajon Valley Union. He was told, spend wisely, spend frugally. Don't run it up.
Right. Necessary expenses.
Right. Necessary expenses. Probably business expenses.
Right. Maybe a lunch if you have a training, a hotel room if you have to go somewhere.
Right. And by all means, if there's some perks with it, maybe use the perks for yourself. But don't get crazy, right? Don't get nuts with this thing. Well, a Cajon Valley board member is questions the superintendent over his $19,000 a month credit card bill.
What? 19,000?
$19,000.
Dang, what's he buying?
Let's find out. Because I can't believe, what do you run up $19,000 a month on?
That's just not sales at Express. Like,
No. In 22 months, Cajon Valley Superintendent David Miyashiro spent $400,000 on his district credit card charges.
how do you think you're not going to get in trouble for that?
I don't know how you think that that's just going to wash over. Like,
nobody's going to notice.
No.
$400,000.
Right. El Cajon, California, from May of 2022 to the beginning of March of 2024, Cajon Valley Union Superintendent David Miyashiro averaged $19,000 in purchases on his district-issued credit card. In all, according to credit card statements obtained by CBS 8 through a state records request, Miyashiro racked up nearly $399,821 on his district credit card during that time. Superintendent Miyashiro spending for the Cajon Valley Union School District includes thousands of dollars for professional conferences and memberships in education associations, as well as tens of thousands on private tours, airfare, hotels, fine dining, and catering. Wow.
Okay, so he's just like going to conferences and like full vacation mode.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
Rounds of golf, massages. Anybody want to stay at the Four Seasons?
Oh man, give him the suite. Open bar.
Yeah, baby. That's the life.
Oh, that's wild.
Miyashiro's credit card pulls from public dollars as part of the district's $300 million budget to serve its 18,000 students. Well, he got 400,000 of it.
Can't even imagine the thought process. I had to get a hotel room once for a conference I was going to for work. And I was all beside myself because the only rooms that they reserved for us to use were ones with double beds. I'm like, I'm only one person. We just need one single bed. It has to be so much cheaper for me to go single bed. I don't need all this room. I feel so bad spending this much money. And he's like, $400,000 later.
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
400 grand, no big deal here, Jess. Come on.
Wow.
Cajon Valley School Board member Anthony Carnevale said he has been left in the dark about the spending and how the trips, hotels, meals, and private tours benefit the students and taxpayers. Well, they could have came with. I mean, the invite was open. I mean, anybody can come with it, right?
It makes him a more well-rounded person.
That's right.
He learns, he grows, he gets relaxed.
Yeah. A relaxed superintendent is a good superintendent who's forward thinking and brings forward thinking ideas to the district. God,
there you go.
I'm such a good bullshitter. How do I get one of these jobs? I need a $400,000 budget for next year. That's all I'm saying. At Carnevale, meanwhile, we have classrooms with needs going unmet, who pointed to data that shows that 43% of students did not meet standards for English language arts in the 2022-23 school year, and half of the students did not meet standards for math.
Oh my gosh, this guy is just a sleaze.
According to county data, the K-8 district student population in El Cajon is among the most socioeconomically disadvantaged in the county. In the 2022-23 school year, nearly 3/4 of the district's students qualified for free and reduced price meals, and 1/3 of the students were English language learners. Boy, that's embarrassing. Could this money
what a jerk.
Yeah, right? Could this money be better put to, or better, let me try that again. Could this money be put to better use for the students of the district instead of travel to conferences and sometimes three meals a day, he says? How does this benefit the students of the district? Criticism of the superintendent's high credit card spending has surfaced before. This isn't the first time.
Wow, he's a repeat offender?
Yeah.
And they're just like, just don't do that again. And then he does it again.
Actually, it wasn't him. It was former trustee Jill Bardo sued Cajon Valley School District and Superintendent. Oh, it was him. Sued the school district and Superintendent Miyashiro for allegedly creating a hostile work environment after she questioned the superintendent's high credit card expenses. The school district by filing a restraining order against Bardo over allegations that she had harassed the staff.
Oh my gosh, she's like trying to call him out and she gets in trouble.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Judges in each of the lawsuits went on to dismiss the complaints. Now, more than 4 years later, there are once again questions over Superintendent Miyashiro's use of district-issued credit cards. Board member Carnevale hopes the questions will inform parents and taxpayers and let them decide if the benefits outweigh the costs. I don't know how you think $19,000 a month is acceptable.
I'd be so mad. We're paying for that as taxpayers. We're paying for all of that.
Yeah. Transparency is lacking in the district, Carnevale said. Parents have more authority than maybe they're aware. These are their schools. This is their school district. If you want to know how it breaks down, I'll tell you just quickly and we can move on to the next story. So Miyashiro is one of the highest paid superintendents in San Diego County, as well as in the state. His most recent contract says Miyashiro receives $800 a month for a car allowance and a $300 monthly allowance for business-related expenses. he gets $1,100 a month in perks. Okay.
And that's not including his salary.
His salary, Jess, is $408,000 a year.
Wow. That's bananas. And the teachers are probably not making anywhere near.
Probably not.
Uh,
So Miyashiro used his district credit card to spend roughly $30,000 on airfare and travel over 22 months. He spent more than $50,000 on food, another $115,700 on catering.
gosh.
What do you cater for $115,000?
I don't know. I'm not fancy enough to even wrap my brain around what that would look like.
Jess, I could keep us in steak and lobster for a decade on $115,000.
Think of all the roast beef we could eat for that much.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
He used over $10,000 on ride shares such as Uber and nearly $76,000 on hotels across the country and at home. $76,000 on hotels
In a year.
in a year.
Ugh.
If you're okay, if you're staying at a really nice hotel, which costs, okay, even if it's, oh, this is blowing my mind. I'm thinking about recent travel that I've done. Even if I'm looking at like budget hotels, budget business hotels that are $150 a night. I mean, we're talking about with business centers and stuff like that. Like, he's not staying at those hotels. We're probably talking, like I said, 4 seasons. We're probably talking $500 a night. They've got to be. How often
How
are
much
you?
is he traveling that he needs to spend that much money on hotels? I mean, that's like $6,000 a month
Yeah,
on average for.
he's not at home very often. He
Ugh,
can't be. For
weird.
$76,000 in a year? Or I'm sorry, over 22 months, over 22 months.
Okay, 2 years. Still, divide that out. That's still over $3,000 a month in hotel rooms.
According to the San Diego County Office of Education, Superintendent Miyashiro makes $407,922 a year, only $68 a year less than San Diego County Superintendent, and $25,203 less than the San Diego Unified's Superintendent. That's insane.
I'm shocked at how much superintendents make. I'm sure it's a tough job, but that seems crazy.
The man makes entirely too much money for his position.
Well, and then add another 400,000 on it that he spent on a credit card. Like,
Yeah, look at the perk. Yeah, look at
we
the
made $800,000 last year.
yeah. But to do all that and then get away with it and then be like, oh, well, I don't see what the big deal is. And get away with it twice. And they still haven't sanctioned him at all. He's still spending the money.
Yeah, as a parent in that district, I would be furious.
You know what I'd do? I'd go to his door and I'd say, where are we going on our next trip, boss? That's what I'd say. Because obviously he's spending your money. You got to get some of that back. Those are your tax dollars at work. Those are your tax dollars going out the window. That's unbelievable. I can't believe that. That's crazy. Let's move on because I want to tear what's left of my hair out of my head or my chin.
No, this one got us kind of fired up.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm trying to get to my next story here, but it doesn't want to let me. It's like, focus on this. Focus your rage and your hate. These are what lead to the dark side. Speaking of, we go from excess on dining in hotels and spending all that money on dining in hotels and whatnot to not spending a dime on dining.
Okay.
We're going to talk about a woman.
Dine and dash.
Dine and dash. Yes, we're going to Florida. That's right. We're going back to Florida, Jess. We're going to talk about a woman who is accused of dining and dashing. She just made one mistake, Jess. Can you figure out what the mistake was?
You forgot to pay?
Well, there's that. But there's a key element when you're going to dine and dash, when you're going to get away with the ultimate crime, you just want to do one thing. You don't want to leave any evidence behind that you were ever there.
Oh, did she like forget her purse or something?
Yes, she forgot
Oh.
her purse at the restaurant as she left. We go to Panama City Beach, Florida, where a woman was accused of dining and dashing at a Panama City Beach restaurant last week. She was busted after realizing she left her purse inside.
That's so dumb.
Video captured by TikTok user at MissyP711 shows the moment an alleged dine and dasher demanded her purse. Yes, she went back for it, folks. That's ballsy. After mistakenly leaving it in a Longhorn Steakhouse restaurant after she bolted from her bill. Wouldn't you have somebody else go back and get the purse, Jess?
I think I would send someone else for it. Yes.
And wouldn't you wait like a couple weeks? Wouldn't you give it time?
I don't know, because your driver's license is in there. So you're busted if you leave it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even, if you go back and get it and they're like, you forgot to pay your bill. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me take care of that. I forget. I totally forgot. I thought I paid and
Or you make something up. Like, I got a phone call. My child had to be rushed to the emergency room.
Right.
And
right.
like, you just make something up.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't, you don't do that. An employee is heard notifying a party of 14 that their table is ready, but the woman who captured the video asks for just a moment, presumably to witness the altercation going down at the hostess stand. Dined and dashed, but the idiots forgot her purse, the text on the video reads. So the manager was holding her purse. The accused thief is heard yelling at the restaurant manager, demanding her bag back as a man with her attempts to calm her down. He is heard telling the woman to chill out as she screams that the employee has her shit. The TikTok video has racked up more than 7 million views with nearly 700,000 likes. Dozens of users commented, well, underneath the post, with another user jokingly wrote, dinner and a show. The witness said after fighting and screaming with the manager, it is believed that the woman ended up paying her tab, as she should have.
Right.
If you're dumb enough to leave your purse behind and come back for it, you're stupid enough to have to pay for your meal. I'm not saying, she should have paid anyways. Don't get me wrong. She shouldn't have dashed to begin with, but you should probably. It's that time now for our not safe for work part of the program. And the way this all works is you're going to take your kids out of the room right now. We've already swore like 4 times during this program, so they probably shouldn't have heard it anyways. But it's time now to take kids out of the room. If you're at work, it's time now for you to put in your earbuds or turn the volume down so the boss doesn't hear, because we're about to get a little bit raunchier than we've been so far. So we'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, and here we go. So Jess, I'm going to ask you this question. Have you ever broken up with or been broken up with in an odd place, such as in public, in a department store, in a restaurant, on public transportation, like a bus, train, or an airplane?
No, nothing fun like that.
No, nothing fun like that.
No.
If you had been, would you take a certain bit of revenge on that person?
In front of everyone?
Yeah.
Probably not. I'm too nice.
Yeah.
But I'd love to witness it if someone else was doing it.
Well, there's one man that did, to the point of criminal prosecution.
I mean, as long as they weren't like using a samurai sword or anything.
No. But there's the I've told this story on the show before. There used to be a time in this country before 9/11 where if you were standing at a scanner at the airport, remember when you could walk with your friends to, the gate and you could see them
Yeah.
off and say goodbye and watch their plane take off? Well, it used to be you could go to the scanner and you could watch their bags go through, right?
Mhm.
Well, when we were in college, we took our friend to the airport, Buddy and I did, and she was having her bag scanned on the scanner. This is at La Crosse Airport in Wisconsin. And as her bags are going through, I went, "Oh, look, a bomb," just as a joke. Thinking it was funny, right? I just,
Not funny.
no. Because I saw about 4 assholes pucker on the workers there at the airport, and they went, "That is not funny." And I was like, "Oh, come on. It's funny, right?" And they were like, "Not funny unless you want to get arrested." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, not funny. I get it. Not funny at all, right?" Well, this man in this story, even after 9/11, has not realized that the word bomb is not funny. And he decided to use the word bomb towards his ex-girlfriend who had jilted him right on the plane and told him they were no longer dating. So he decided to tell somebody on the plane, one of the flight attendants, that she had a bomb in her bag.
She broke up with him on the plane.
Yep.
And then he said she had a bomb in her bag.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't think I'd want to witness that because that would become chaos.
His
And I
exact
don't like chaos in my airport or in my airplane.
right. His exact words were, "How fucked am I?" After saying this. A jilted passenger who twice claimed his girlfriend had a bomb on the flight after she broke up with him was sentenced this past week. After the Breeze Airways flight he was on, I've never heard of Breeze Airways.
I haven't either.
Yeah. After the Breeze Airways flight he was on was diverted to Jacksonville, Florida, because Evan Sims made 2 separate claims that his then girlfriend had a bomb on board, dumped his drink on her, and called her a bitch.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, nice guy. I don't think he's
I'm glad she broke up with him.
Yeah, he's quite the catch, ladies. The 41-year-old man had just one question for the FBI agent interviewing him as bomb detection dogs searched the fuselage. How fucked am I? My guess, pretty fucked. On Thursday, Sims, a resident of Rhode Island, was sentenced to 2 years in prison with 8 months credit since he had been jailed since his arrest in early December of 2023.
Oh my gosh. Was it worth it?
Probably not, no. According to a statement from the U.S. Justice Department, Sims pleaded guilty in March. As part of his sentence, he must pay a little more than $25,000 in restitution to the airline. An FBI affidavit unraveled the drama that unfolded aboard Breeze Airways Flight 717, leaving Orlando International Airport to Providence, Rhode Island. Sims, the special agent reported, was traveling on December 5th of 2023 with his romantic partner at the time, and the couple had begun to argue. The woman was identified only as TC in court records. Witnesses told agents that from the start of the flight, Sims would be heard babbling about how he would fire up a vape, and when TC told him to stop, he muttered about not having heard of the airline, and then stated he didn't want to be gone with the wind and hoped that the airliner wouldn't go down. Boy, this guy sounds like a real asshole, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Agents learned that TC told Sims several times that their relationship was over, and she begged him to leave her alone. The woman said Sims refused to do so and eventually dumped a drink on her as he hurled insults at her, including calling her a bitch. I wish there was such a thing as in the air restraining orders, right? And where are these air marshals that you hear about, right?
Yeah, and he's acting like that to her in front of everyone in an airplane. Like, how awful and rotten is he alone when he gets mad?
Right, right. He was also aggressive with staff on the plane and obnoxious to fellow passengers, prompting several people to request seat changes far from Sims. God, how many open seats were there that people were able to get away from him, right?
That's true.
At one point, court records indicate that after the flight had already taken off and the seatbelt light was still on, Sims partially stood up in his seat and exclaimed that he wanted to get off the plane. Nice guy. An off-duty police officer was also on board, however, and overheard Sims making a fuss. Records show that when the pilot learned of the disturbance and made the call to divert to Jacksonville, or he at that time made the call to divert to Jacksonville International Airport, a flight attendant stated that it appeared to her that Sims appeared to be satisfied with the diversion announcement and was smirking while other passengers appeared upset. So
I'd be so mad.
He was just fine with the fact that he had disrupted the entire flight and they were going to land.
Yeah, he ruined everyone else's plans. They weren't even going to the same place they were supposed to go to if they had connecting flights. Their trip is ruined.
Yeah. Yep. And if people were on a schedule,
Yeah.
they were screwed.
Oh.
When the plane landed, Sims and TC were detained and bomb detection dogs were used to sweep the vessel. Sims told FBI agents he was only making jokes about the airplane going down and that he was nervous flying. His girlfriend had just broken up with him, he said, and he did not want to fly up to Rhode Island anymore. He didn't say bomb either, he claimed, because he generally does not use that word and has a very dark sense of humor. Sims did not think he would say the word bomb, but suggested he said calm, and that passengers misconstrued what he said.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a big line of bullshit, right? He told the FBI that he was only human. However, he could have used bomb on accident one time, but definitely not twice, he said.
Once was enough, buddy.
Yeah, that's right. As the interview wrapped up, that's when Sims turned to the agent and asked how much trouble he was in. How fucked am I? He said, according to the affidavit. When Sims was sentenced on Wednesday for his behavior aboard the Breeze Airways flight, Jacksonville NBC affiliate WTLV reported that he expressed remorse and said he had been drinking too much. I think he's just an asshole too much. That's his problem. In a sentencing memorandum provided to the federal judge overseeing the case, an attorney for Sims expressed that Sims desperately wanted substance abuse treatment and mental health counseling to be part of any sentence he receives. He just didn't want to go to jail.
Yeah. As an excuse.
That's right. The quote here is, he is tired of drinking and causing trouble because of it. This period has helped him to realize that he needs to cut not just substances, but also alcohol out of his life completely. Mr. Sims recognizes he needs help getting there, though, the memorandum states. I think he needs help getting to just anywhere but around people. I think they need to put a desert island somewhere and just let him stay there.
Hopefully he gets the help he needs.
Yeah. Oh, you're so nice about it, Jess. I would have put him up somewhere near Superman's Fortress of Solitude and let him freeze. Yeah, that's that. Our next story has to do with, you've heard of the Emperor and the Emperor's New Clothes and
oh yeah, I love that one.
Yeah. Well, this emperor had no clothes, so to speak. We're going to Vero Beach, Florida. Of course, we're going to Florida. And hey, he's nude.
My favorite kind of Florida man story.
That's right. It turns out, according to cops, the emperor's helper was found with no clothes. Despite a royal dispensation claim, a trespass suspect has been arrested. I know it sounds confusing, but bear with me. The emperor's helper had no clothes, according to Florida police. Following recent reports about a male intruder sleeping inside a Vero Beach apartment complex stairwell, an officer on foot patrol found a suspect standing inside a common room at around 3 a.m. 44-year-old Gregory Gornell was fully nude, according to a arrest report, and told police that he was staying at the facility because he was the emperor's helper.
Makes sense. Sure.
Let me show you the picture before I go any further, Jess, because you're going to get a kick out on what he looks like. There you go.
Oh, he looks a little impaired.
Yeah, just a bit. Just a
touch.
Yeah, just a touch.
Mouth gaping open, one eye half shut.
Yeah. Gornell reportedly told the officer that the building, an independent living community for residents over the age of 62, was under new management and that the emperor told him that he could stay there. Wondering who the emperor is. I don't know.
Very gracious.
He is, yes. He's a good emperor. He's a kind emperor. Gornell, who had previously been trespassed from the building, was asked how to get in contact with the emperor. The suspect advised that such royal outreach could be done through the electric lines.
What does that mean? The telephones? Or like the actual electric lines that your electricity comes through?
Maybe the electric lines that the electricity comes through, I think.
That is funky.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Charged with trespass, Gornell pleaded no contest and was adjudicated guilty of the misdemeanor, for which he will spend the next week locked up. Gornell, whose occupation is listed as construction worker in jail records, has previous convictions for cocaine possession, theft, marijuana possession, trespass, and possession of drug paraphernalia. So the electric lines could be electric blue, and he could just be imagining them.
I think our friend has some issues.
Maybe a tad. Maybe a tad. And for our final story, Jess, here on Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals today, we're going to a mysterious place called Campbell. I can't tell. It's in California, near San Jose. Campbell has something missing. When I say something missing, I mean a giant cock.
What?
They're giant cock.
Giant what?
They're giant.
Oh, wow.
Missing.
I just want to hear you say it over and over again.
Their giant cock is missing.
It's a very sad thing to lose.
Well,
it's so bad if it's a tiny cock, but when you lose a giant cock, it's a real loss to the whole community.
That's right. Generally, a town will not lose their cock. Generally, it's a town is very attached to their cock. I'm just saying, but we go to Campbell, California. Campbell Police Department recovered a missing giant metallic rooster from a homeless encampment on Friday. Police said it had been stolen from a local home improvement store the day before. Campbell Police Department said the decorative rooster was reported stolen from California Home and Garden in Campbell. Reports were of two unknown male suspects who had a little bit of cock envy. Stole a large rooster from the business on Thursday afternoon. Earlier on Friday morning, police received a tip that the rooster had been spotted near the homeless encampment on Roosevelt Park in San Jose. With the help of the San Jose Police Department, the rooster was recovered and safely returned to California Home and Garden. Campbell Police Department said they were unable to identify the two men responsible for the rooster theft. They'll go around handling other men's cocks, just saying. They are continuing to follow up on leads as of this report. Anyone with information about that mishandling of a cock can call 408-866-2101. Just saying.
Be a hero.
That's right.
Call them and help them understand what happened to the cock.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. All right, with that, that's how we end Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. Jess, are you still offering that discount code for those dates?
I am.
Palmer?
Absolutely, yes. So if you go to my website or ghoststories.inc, I have an event up that we're doing in November at the Palmer House. And there is a code just for you guys that's 20% off your tickets. So you just have to type in darkness20 when you check out. All caps, darkness20.
Excellent. Excellent. We have a link to it in the description of this program. Go ahead and take advantage of that as well. Jess also has 2 books that are available for pre-sale. We have a link to that as well. You can check that out in the description of this program. Tomorrow on the big show, supernatural news. And then tomorrow we'll give you a little hint as to who's on the program on Thursday. See how that works. We're leaking out little hints as to who's on.
We're leaking.
We're leaking. That has nothing to do with the cock story that we just read. Just saying. Nobody likes a leaky cock.
We're incontinent.
There you go. This part of the program sponsored by Depends. Anyways, so that'll do it for today. For Jessica Freeburg, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for joining us for True Crime Tuesday. Again, we encourage you to pick up today's book. Today's book is by John Ferriso, and Allinadayswork Work is the name of the book. 20 years NYPD. John Ferriso's book is excellent. I want you to pick it up. We have a link in the description of this program to pick up John's book. So there you go. We'll see you tomorrow for Supernatural News. For Jessica Freeburg, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you for tuning in to True Crime Tuesday.
For more audio and video archives of True Crime Tuesday, please visit darknessradioshow.com. Thanks for watching.